Chapter 460. The tickets for Mo Fei's concert in Yangqing City on the 25th of March were sold out on the day it was released. Many people wanted to buy them, but they couldn't. And some of the tickets that the scalpers tried their best to get had also been sold at sky-high prices. This was also the reason why Mo Fei's concerts were too few. At present, the concert plan announced by Tian may seem to be only 3. Originally, Niu Meiling also wanted to give Mo Fei 6 more concerts between April and June, trying to squeeze the remaining value out of Mo Fei. But because Mo Fei's relationship was suddenly exposed, they hadn't found the person behind the scenes yet. So this matter was temporarily put on hold. And now with Zhu Jie's intervention, even if they wanted to arrange concerts for Mo Fei, they would probably have to get the consent of Mo Fei and Yang Yi. Not to mention anything else, Mo Fei, Mo Shaowan, Guozi, and Ding Xiang, as the first echelon, had set off early to Yangqing City to make preparations. Yang Yi and his family set off in the afternoon. They also took a plane to Yangqing and checked into the hotel that Fu Jun had arranged for them. In the car that Fu Jun's chauffeur came to pick them up, Yang Yi pointed out the window and smiled at Shishi, who insisted on sitting with him. Shishi, do you still remember that? We saw it the last time we came to Yangqing. Where? Papa, what are you talking about? Cece curiously stuck her little face to the car window and looked at the heavy traffic outside the window. She looked at the street lights on the city road and the billboards on the side. When night fell, the neon lights were overflowing with color. It was also very beautiful. However, the dazzling scenery was dazzling and she couldn't recognize anything. Wait a minute. Yang Yi waited for the car to get on the viaduct. He gently pinched Cece's little hand and pointed it at the tall, tower-like building with purple lights outside the car window. Look, that's it. This time she recognized her. She turned her head and looked at her father with a happy smile. I know. That's called Canton Waste. She had a deep impression of this because the last time she came, her father had told her that the building was called this. Then he had tickled her waist with his fingers and made her laugh for a long time. How could she not remember? That's right, it's called Canton Waste. Yang Yi got the hint immediately. He purposely widened his eyes as he bared his fangs and brandished his claws, ready to pounce on it. I don't want it. I'm ticklish. The little girl twisted her small waist to hide while grabbing her father's hand to prevent him from moving. The whole car was filled with her bell-like laughter. Which one is Kanto? What made them so happy? Even Yang Huan couldn't help but move closer to take a look. In the evening, after having dinner together at the hotel, everyone returned to their own rooms. Mo Henian was old and needed to rest early. Before he returned to his room, he took a look at the room that Yang Yi and Murphy brought Shishi back to. Mo Henian couldn't help but frown. However, he didn't say anything like he did before. After all, after the showdown he had admitted that Yang Yi and Murphy were in a relationship. It was natural for a married couple to sleep together. Moreover, there were many young people in the United States who were not married and had sex at a young age. Therefore, even though he was unhappy, he didn't say anything and returned to his room. In the room, Yang Yi stopped Shishi, who was running to turn on the TV. Shishi, come. Bring the water to your mother. Tell her that you're not feeling well today. You should drink more warm water. Yang Yi mixed hot water and cold water into a cup of warm water and handed it to the little girl. Then he pointed at Murphy, who was packing Shishi's clothes in the suitcase, and smiled. Murphy didn't have a cold or a fever. She didn't know what was wrong with her. She didn't have a good appetite at dinner and put down her chopsticks after a while. Yang Yi was worried that she would be hungry at night, so he packed some buns and snacks for her. Shishi nodded and stretched out her hands. However, before she took the cup, she asked worriedly, Papa, is it hot? It's not hot. Don't worry. I've tested it. It's just warm water. It's just warm. Yang Yi smiled. The little girl took the paper cup and held it carefully. Like a little snail, she walked forward step by step to her mother's side. She handed the water in her hand to her mother and said obediently, Mom, you're not feeling well. Drink more water. Murphy had already noticed the movement here when Shishi went to get the water. Therefore, she was very worried when she saw Shishi holding the water with trembling hands. Thank you, Shishi. You're so nice. Murphy squatted down and took the water with her left hand. Then she hugged Shishi's small body with her right hand and kissed the little girl's delicate little face. Shishi leaned in her mother's arms and smiled happily. She said honestly, "Papa gave it to me." Yang Yi and Murphy looked at each other. He raised his eyebrows proudly. Murphy knew what this guy meant. After drinking the water, she stood up, walked over and kissed Yang Yi's face. She said angrily, Okay, I'll give you one too." Yang Yi and Murphy tidied up their clothes. He looked up and said to Shishi, "By the way, Shishi, do you still remember Brother Fu Yanba?" Shishi, who was watching TV, turned her head and blinked her big eyes. She said, "Yes, Brother Fu Yanba is very tall." "Is he your friend's child?" Murphy asked curiously. "I seem to remember this name too." "Yes, Fu Jun's son. But his son is older. He's in the 5th grade this year," Yang Yi said with a smile. He then looked at Shishi and said, "Tomorrow Uncle Fu Jun said that he'll take Brother Yanba to the zoo with us to see the elephants. What do you think? See the elephants?" Shishi ran over from the sofa in surprise and threw herself on the soft bed. Then she looked up and asked, "Is it an elephant with long teeth?" Shishi was in kindergarten and had lessons on how to recognize animals by looking at pictures. When she came back, Yang Yi also drew cartoon pictures and took her to review them. The little girl already had a preliminary understanding of these animals. "Yes, there are tigers, monkeys, and so on. We can see them in the zoo," Yang Yi said with a smile. "Isn't your friend very busy?" Murphy asked curiously. "He's much better now. He hired some capable people like Li Long from Sahara Express. He only needs to coordinate the overall situation and doesn't have to worry about the details. So he can spare some time to spend with his family," Yang Yi explained to Murphy with a smile. Fu Jun was similar to Yang Yi. They were both men who cared about their families. However, after the Sahara online shopping mall began to take off, Fu Jun was often so busy that he didn't even have time to go home. Fortunately, he was self-aware and knew how to hire people to delegate some of his power. This time, when Yang Yi brought Shishi to Yangcheng, Fu Jun found an opportunity to take his son out to play and spend time with little Yanba. He had been complaining for a long time. Murphy held Yang Yi's hand enviously and said coquettishly, "I want to go to the zoo too. I haven't been there in a long time." Shishi blinked her big eyes and said, "Mom, come with us. I want to play with Papa and Mom." Murphy said regretfully, "But Mom is busy. Mom has to prepare for the concert the day after tomorrow and has rehearsal tomorrow. When you're done and free up some time, we'll go wherever you want to go. Anywhere," Yang Yi promised. Murphy was touched and nodded. I can do that." At this time, Cece stood up from the bed, squeezed between her father and mother, and swaggered to steal the limelight. "I can ask Papa to take many, many photos for you. And then Mama, you can see them too." Murphy was stunned for a moment. When she came back to her senses, she smiled and hugged the little girl in her arms. She rubbed her little head and said, "You have a lot of ideas. But this is a great idea. Mom, thank you." Hee hee. The little girl started to cuddle in her mother's arms. Chapter 461. The next day, the media that took the photo used the fact that Yang Yi and Murphy were staying in the same hotel as each other. However, this obviously didn't create any sensational news. What was so strange about a married couple staying in the same hotel? If they didn't stay together, it would be big news. On the other hand, the fans who had bought tickets to the concert were looking forward to it. The fans in Guangzhou had already heard from the fans who had watched the concert in Shanghai that Yang Yi's singing skills were extraordinary. However, they didn't believe what they heard, so they were skeptical. They wondered if Yang Yi would make a guest appearance at the concert. If he appeared, they would be able to verify it with their own ears. Yang Yi wouldn't just sit by and watch his wife's concert, right? The fans didn't know that this guy really didn't plan to appear. On one hand, the concert had already been decided on two guests, Chen Yijie and Guizi. If Yang Yi was at it, it would seem like he was stealing the limelight. Of course, the main problem was that Yang Yi was lazy and didn't know his place. Yang Yi felt that he should keep a low profile if he could. The last time he appeared in public, it was because he had no choice. The media, who had been watching the hotel, didn't realize that Yang Yi wasn't part of the group heading to the concert. He and Shishi got into a private car that Fu Jun had personally picked up and set off from the underground parking lot. On the way, Yang Yi and Fu Jun chatted nonstop in the front seat. Fu Jun had a lot of questions to discuss with Yang Yi about the development of the Sahara online shopping mall. In the back seat, Fu Jun's son, Fu Yanba, kept looking at Shishi, who was sitting next to him. Fu Yanba, who was in the 5th grade this year, was a half-grown boy. He wasn't considered handsome and had thin single-eyelid eyes. One look at him, and one could tell that he was usually shy. He wasn't very close to Shishi, so he only stole glances at her and didn't dare to talk to her. Shishi turned her head and looked at her little brother. Fu Yanba immediately sat up straight. The little girl was confused. She didn't know what to say to her brother who was so much older than her. She could only turn her head and look out of the car window. She usually sat in the child's safety seat, but Uncle Fu had forgotten to bring the child's safety seat today, so she was finally free. Therefore, while the adults in the front seat were chatting enthusiastically, the atmosphere in the back seat was a little dull until they arrived at the zoo, which was not far to begin with. When Yang Yi carried Shishi out of the car, the little girl whispered in her father's ear, "Papa, Brother Yanba keeps looking at me." "Really?" Yang Yi laughed. He rubbed Shishi's head and said, "Did you talk to Brother Yanba?" "No." Shishi shook her head and said unhappily, But Brother Yanba didn't talk to me either." On the other side, Fu Jun took some drinks and snacks from the trunk. After locking the car, he walked over and Fu Yanba followed behind his father. "Come Shishi. Do you like these snacks that Uncle bought for you?" Fu Jun said to Shishi with a smile. She was, after all, the beloved Sisi. When Fu Jun saw how adorable the little girl was, he forgot about his son. "I like them." Shishi glanced at the bag. There were biscuits and seaweed that she often ate at home. She clapped her hands happily. Yang Yi smiled and said to Fu Jun, "She just told me that Yanba kept looking at her in the car but didn't say anything." When Sisi heard this, she shyly hid behind her father, and only peeked out a pair of smiling eyes. "Yanba, you are a big brother. Why are you still so shy?" Yang Yi teased. Fu Yanba scratched his head embarrassedly and didn't know how to answer. "Haven't you been talking about Sister Shishi at home?" Fu Jun patted his son and smiled at Yang Yi. "He likes your storybooks. Sometimes he tells his mother that he envies Shishi because she can listen to your stories so often." Yang Yi was stunned. He didn't expect this kid to be his fan. "Let's go, Yanba. You have to hold your sister's hand and protect her, okay?" Fu Jun said. "But I'm scared too." Fu Yanba held Shishi's hand obediently and didn't notice Uncle Yang Yi's gaze. However, he said to his father awkwardly, "What if the lion comes?" What should he do? He was desperate too. If he couldn't protect himself, how could he protect his sister? "Actually, you don't have to worry too much about Shishi. I'm still here." Yang Yi coughed softly and said. To be honest, if Fu Jun hadn't asked Fu Yanba to hold Shishi's hand out of concern, Yang Yi wouldn't have been able to tolerate a little boy holding Shishi's hand, even if he was a few years older. Forget it. They were all acquaintances. He would still be watching. At this time, Shishi shook Fu Yanba's hand and whispered, "Brother Yanba, don't be afraid. My papa said that they are locked in a cage and can't get out." Fu Jun couldn't help but shake his head and said, "Look, Yanba. You are not as knowledgeable as this little girl." Fu Yanba was a little embarrassed. He pursed his lips and lowered his head. "It's okay. Yanba's grades are good. Shishi, when you go to school in the future, you have to learn from Brother Yanba. He can get full marks on all his exams." Yang Yi smiled. "He's that good?" Shishi exclaimed. She didn't understand but felt that it was awesome. Going to the zoo was a trip for children to improve their knowledge. Shishi was pretty good. She recognized many animals. However, she was a little confused about those that she had never learned before, such as hippos and baboons. In front of the baboon cage, Shishi and Fu Yanba had a little argument. "This is a monkey," Shishi said. "This is not a monkey, this is a baboon." It wasn't Fu Yanba's first time here. He recognized it. "This is a monkey." The little girl pouted and said unhappily, "Monkeys are not this big, and baboons are so ugly." Fu Yanba tried to correct her. However, she still insisted. She said loudly, "This is a monkey with permed hair." Behind them, Yang Yi finally couldn't help but laugh. He interrupted the two children's argument and said to Shishi, "Brother Yamba is right. This is a baboon, not a monkey. However, you're not wrong to say that it's a monkey because baboons are also part of the monkey family." This answer was equivalent to a reward of 50 yuan each. Both children could accept it. Shishi also felt that she wasn't completely wrong. However, she listened to her father obediently and knew that baboon was the real name of the monkey with permed hair in front of them. Yangqing Zoo was very well run. There were many types of animals. Shishi even saw a peacock with its tail spread. While the little girl feasted her eyes, she didn't forget about her mother and urged her father to take photos of her mother. As for the situation where Yang Yi was troubled by Fu Yamba and Shishi holding hands, this was resolved halfway through. When Shishi was tired from walking, Yang Yi happily carried Shishi and didn't let go. He didn't give this brat another chance. When they returned to the hotel in the evening, the sky was still bright in the south. Murphy and Guazi, who went to the rehearsal today, were also back. Everything seemed to be going well. However, Chen Yijie, who came from Harbor City to participate in the rehearsal, also came to the hotel. Originally, with Chen Yijie's popularity, he didn't need to come to the rehearsal. However, Chen Yijie wanted to visit Yang Yi, so he came early. Yang Yi could also give him the song that he had prepared. Chapter 462. Chen Yijie didn't come here to urge Yang Yi to write a song for him. Tianxiang Records had invited Yang Yi to write a song for Chen Yijie in the name of the company. He just hadn't seen Yang Yi for a few months, so he should pay him a visit. The relationship between two people needed to be closer. Chen Yijie did better than Yang Yi in this regard. Since they hadn't had dinner yet, Yang Yi informed the hotel to book a private room for everyone to have dinner together. "The one I didn't expect the most is Xiaogua. When I met Xiaogua at your place, I thought he was your agent. I didn't expect him to be a singer now." Chen Yijie basically knew all the people present. Even Mo Fei's father was introduced to him at the rehearsal in the afternoon. So he told Yang Yi about him without any hesitation. In order to adapt to the atmosphere at the table, Chen Yijie tried to express himself in Mandarin. Although he still had a strong Hong Kong accent, it was much better than last year. "Eason, you can't say that. I just sang a song. How can I be a singer? I'm still your fan." Guazi stood up with a smile, picked up his glass, and clinked it with Eason's. He said, "It's my honor to sing at the same concert as you." "Hey, you're too modest." Mu Ziong, also Yang Yi's songs, I've heard them all. You sang very well. You're full of emotions. There are people in Harbor City who like to listen to this fairy tale. Chen Yijie laughed. After Guazi sat down, Ding Xiang, who was next to him, bumped his arm. Guazi leaned over and heard Ding Xiang whisper, "Don't drink so much wine." "It's not wine. No one drinks today. We have to sing tomorrow." Guazi covered his mouth and explained to her. On the other side, Murphy, who was picking out the fish bones for Shishi, raised her head and asked in surprise, "Hey, Xiaogua was Yang Yi's agent before?" "No, he was just a guest." Yang Yi smiled and told Murphy a short history of Chen Yijie asking for a song. He didn't know how to sing, so thanks to Guazi's help. "This guest role cost our company a lot of money." Chen Yijie laughed. Later, President Hu said that he would never bet with Yang Yi again, especially when he saw that the songs you wrote for Murphy were so good. Yang smiled and said, "The bet was just because the price was too low when I was a newcomer, so I wanted to get a higher profit. Of course, now that you're offering a generous price, there's no need for us to take the risk." "Brother Yang, are you writing songs for Eason now?" Guazi caught the main point and asked in surprise, "What songs did you write? Can we listen to it in advance?" While everyone was talking, Mo Henian was at the side. Although he couldn't get a word in, he wasn't left out. Murphy and Yang Yi would occasionally turn to whisper to him and ask him what he wanted to eat. However, Mo Henian didn't care at all. Instead, he listened carefully to these people's conversations and found a strange situation. Murphy was more famous than Yang Yi. Logically speaking, his daughter should receive more attention. Or Chen Yijie. the Hong Kong star that he had heard about from his wife, should also be the center of everyone's attention. However, this wasn't the case. Murphy didn't take the initiative to talk. She just faintly relied on Yang Yi, as if the man was the most important person outside. Chen Yijia's attitude towards Yang Yi was also beyond Mohinian's imagination. He was very respectful, not to mention the others. The overall atmosphere gave Mohinian a feeling that Yang Yi, who usually didn't show off, was the real center of attention. Putting aside Mohinian's feelings, after Chen Yijia heard Guizi's words, he quickly explained, "Our company just asked Yang Yi for a song not long ago. Composing is a very difficult job. How can it be so fast?" Yang Yi smiled and said, "Eason, you're wrong. I've already prepared 2 songs for you. It's just that I had some things to do before, so I didn't have the chance to go to the recording studio to show the accompaniment." "Really? 2 songs?" Chen Yijia asked in surprise. "That's right. It's the same as last time. 1 Cantonese song and 1 Mandarin song." Yang Yi nodded. "The Cantonese song is the one you sang in the car when we came back from the bar last time?" Guizi asked. He knew the name of the song. Yang Yi shook his head lightly and said, "No, it's another song I wrote for Eason. It's called Bicycle." Murphy looked at Yang Yi with some admiration. She felt that it was very magical. Yang Yi could always come up with new songs without anyone noticing. And until now, Yang Yi's songs were all very good. It was fine if they didn't mention it, but now that Yang Yi mentioned it, everyone's curiosity was bursting. They all wanted Yang Yi to sing it. "Do I have to sing it without accompaniment?" Yang Yi smiled and looked at Chen Yijia. This song was written for him, so Yang Yi wanted Chen Yijia to make the decision. "It's okay, just sing it a cappella. I can't wait to know what kind of song it is." Chen Yijia leaned forward, both arms on the table, and looked at Yang Yi expectantly. "Okay then." Yang Yi did not hesitate. Murphy poured a glass of water for him. Yang Yi drank it, cleared his throat, and began to brew his emotions. There was no accompaniment, but the accompaniment was already echoing in his mind. Yang Yi closed his eyes and seemed to see the gentle and soft sound of the guitar. It was soft, like the quiet flow of Hong Kong at night. Don't assume that I know everything is for me. Why is it so great? I can't feel it." Yang Yi opened his mouth, and the familiar Cantonese that came out of his mouth still amazed everyone. Although they all knew that Yang Yi knew Cantonese, he really sang it skillfully. Yang Yi sang with his eyes closed, while Chen Yijia looked at Yang Yi seriously, listening to every line he sang. "Let's not talk about how good love is. I only remember one time when we were riding bicycles, hugging each other tightly." Yang Yi suddenly raised his voice. "Hard to leave, hard to part, I want to hug each other tighter. Life is like the wilderness, like a child can lean on his father's shoulder, who wants to get off the car." Murphy looked at Yang Yi infatuatedly. She was not like Guizi, Ding Xiang, and Yang Huan, who did not understand the lyrics. Murphy not only understood it, but also liked the melody of the song. If she did not see it with her own eyes, she would have found it hard to believe that such a moving song came from Yang Yi's mouth. Of course, Murphy did not doubt it. Because no matter how good Yang Yi's songs were, she firmly believed in him. The current Murphy was just proud of Yang Yi. Chen Yijia also understood the lyrics. It seemed that Yang Yi was expressing his feelings for his father. That father did not know how to express his feelings, nor did he know how to properly express his love for his child. Note 1. The lyrics at the end confirmed Chen Yijia's guess. "How can I believe this, how much you love me, but inconvenient to let me know, miss the bicycle, the only hug I ever had." What made Chen Yijia even more surprised was Yang Yi's singing. Chen Yijia did not agree with the media's previous boasting, because he had heard Yang Yi sing before. When he sang "Long Time No See," there were quite a few flaws. But now listening to Yang Yi sing "Bicycle," he was like a famous singer who had been famous for a long time. There was no accompaniment, but he still sang the proper melody, especially when he sang the climax, such as, "There are always some things that are hard to part with and hard to part with, so it's normal that can't be avoided." The melody did not seem difficult to sing, but Chen Yijia could still tell that Yang Yi's singing skills were strong in this section. Of course, he did not know that Yang Yi was actually using the experience from his previous life. But he had to admit that after learning a lot about singing from Murphy, Yang Yi's singing skills were indeed not comparable to an ordinary recording studio singer. Chen Yijie was infatuated with the song. He could not help but tremble, as if he was thinking about the effect of this song if he sang it. After the song ended, Yang Yi found that his hand was held by Murphy. She looked at him affectionately. Murphy did not understand the deep meaning of this song, and neither did Chen Yijie. Only she understood Yang Yi the most. She knew that Yang Yi wrote this song about his true feelings. Murphy knew what kind of father Yang Chonggui was, and she could empathize with him. Murphy was exactly the same as Yang Chonggui. They both did not know how to properly express their love for their children. "It's okay, we'll be together." Murphy was too embarrassed to say it, but she seemed to be using her eyes to express her concern for Yang Yi. Yang Yi understood. He smiled and gently squeezed Murphy's hand, giving a positive response. Although a lot of words were used here, the emotional exchange between the two of them only lasted a few seconds. After everyone started applauding, Murphy embarrassedly let go of Yang Yi's hand. This song. Chen Yijie did not know what words to use to describe it. "It's suitable for you, right?" Yang Yi smiled and said. "Suitable for what?" Chen Yijie and Yang Yi both understood. This song was not as simple as it looked. There were many parts that tested one's singing skills. Moreover, the emotions expressed in this song were very complicated. Without Chen Yijie's voice, which was full of stories, this song would be much inferior to other singers. "Yes." Chen Yijie nodded and smiled. "I can't wait to go back to the recording studio to practice this song." "Don't. You're going to sing for my wife," Yang Yi joked. "Also, after listening to the first song, you don't want to listen to the second one?" "Yes, of course." Chen Yijie hurriedly nodded, as if he was afraid that Yang Yi would stop the second song if he said it too late. Guozi and the others could not help but laugh. It was rare to see Chen Yijie so agitated. Chapter 463. After all, not everyone could understand the beauty of Cantonese songs, and not everyone could hear the ingenious singing style Yang Yi used in this song. Although Yang Yi sang this song very well, everyone was looking forward to the next Mandarin song. Would it be the Mandarin version of Bicycle? Thinking of the relationship between long time not seen and better not seen, everyone could not help but guess. Yang Yi was still the same as before. He closed his eyes, and in his mind, there seemed to be a piano placed in front of him. He sat on it and began to play. However, there was no prelude. He sang softly along with his own piano sound. "One day, I realized that I no longer have the right to feel sorry for myself." Yang Yi sang very affectionately. His soft nasal voice created an artificial surround sound. The first sentence made the sad mood spread. Chen Yijie smiled when he heard the first sentence. He liked this type of song. The piano accompaniment in Yang Yi's mind was very gentle and simple. There was no element of flashy skills. It was very pure and simple. It was like a light melody that could lead people into dreams. It could calm people's restless souls and restless hearts. Only tireless shoulders are left, bearing simple satisfaction. Yang Yi's singing was the same. In the simple melody, he talked about the difficulties he encountered. However, this did not mean that Yang Yi sang very plainly. The simpler the melody, the harder it was to sing it. In the previous life, the doctor and the lyricist Xiao Ke spent a long time on this song. From the control of the pronunciation to the control of the emotions, they deliberated over many details. In the end, they recorded more than 20 different singing styles. In the end, the people in the studio voted together to choose the most touching singing style. Although Yang Yi was just picking up other people's ideas, he did not embarrass the doctor. With the same singing style, Yang Yi sang with strong emotions. "I want stable happiness. I want to be able to resist the cruelty of the apocalypse. I want to have a home in the restless night." This part was still ordinary, but it made people's hearts tremble. Chen Yijie's whole body trembled when he heard the song. "Can I have a home to return to?" He felt moved by such emotions, and he even thought of his wife. A myriad of emotions welled up in his heart, and tears welled up in his eyes. "I want steady happiness, to be able to touch you with my hands, to feel your warmth every time I reach into your arms." The second verse had different lyrics. It was the same simple words, but the image was very vivid. It was full of warmth that touched people. At this moment, even Yang Huan and Ding Xiang, who were not very sensitive to music, were moved. Not to mention Murphy. When she listened to this song, she tasted more affection than the others. Others only saw Yang Yi's calmness and his current glory and success. Only Murphy had seen Yang Yi's downfall. Murphy knew that he was singing about himself. He had gone through too many hardships, so he would cherish the happiness he had now. However, Murphy's heart ached for Yang Yi. I want steady happiness. I want to be able to resist the pain of loss. I want to be able to walk the path of no loneliness. I want steady happiness. I want to be able to use my life as the length. No matter where I am, I won't get lost. Yang Yi sang the same melody 4 different verses. Each verse was more affectionate than the last. Rather than saying that his ability to write lyrics was amazing, it was better to say that he had finally found an outlet to vent his emotions. The repeated "I want steady happiness" was probably Yang Yi's cry, wasn't it? Murphy's heart ached for Yang Yi. It was also because of this that she saw this man for the first time. This man who had always been strong and could shelter her from the wind and rain actually had a weak side. He was not as fearless as he appeared to be. He was also afraid of losing and longed for calmness and stability. However, this kind of fragility made Murphy feel that Yang Yi's image was more complete. She felt that her love for Yang Yi had increased because what Yang Yi wanted. Wasn't it what she had always yearned for? I want steady happiness. This is the happiness I want. After singing the song, everyone still felt like they were in a dream. It was as if Yang Yi had never sung before. Their hearts were in a trance and they didn't know how to express it. Murphy, on the other hand, no longer cared about where she was. When she saw Yang Yi open his eyes and reveal a gentle smile, she couldn't help but lean over and hug Yang Yi's neck and entire body from his shoulder. Yang Yi was a little surprised. He didn't know that Murphy would be so emotional. He quickly opened his arms and hugged her back, gently patting Murphy's back. He seemed to have sensed something. While holding Mo Fei in his arms, he turned his head and glanced at Chen Yijie, who was still intoxicated, Yang Huan, Mo Shaowan, and the others who had ambiguous expressions on their faces. Finally, his gaze fell on Mo Henian. Mo Henian's face was a little dark, but he didn't embarrass Yang Yi. He just snorted and turned his head away. Drink tea. I can't watch anymore. Can I not watch anymore? I want steady happiness for you. Murphy whispered softly in Yang Yi's ear. Only the two of them could hear her voice. I want steady happiness for you too. Yang Yi also said gently to her. Murphy was finally satisfied and separated from Yang Yi. However, Yang Yi could see the reluctance and affection in her eyes. However, the result of such a hug regardless of the occasion was that when Murphy calmed down and looked at the ambiguous eyes of others, she was embarrassed. She didn't know whether to find a hole on the ground and hide in it. Fortunately, at this time she ran over. She pouted and said, Papa, I want a hug too. Was she jealous of her mother? Yang Yi smiled as he picked Cece up and held her in his arms. He kissed the little girl while he was at it. Her soft body and fragrant little face were just the right amount of happiness. How is it? Eason, what do you think of these 2 songs? Yang Yi asked with a smile. Good, very good. I can't wait to go back and record these 2 songs. Chen Yijie rubbed his hands and said. Of course, this was just a joke, but the excitement in his smile was not fake. However, Yang Yi didn't know that in fact, Chen Yijie still had some regrets in his heart. These 2 songs were really good, and they were really suitable for Chen Yijie. However, Chen Yijie still hoped that Yang Yi could write a tailor-made high-pitched song for him like Listen to the Sea. However, Chen Yijie didn't say his regrets. People couldn't be greedy and never get tired of it. They had to know how to be content. The songs Bicycle and Steady Happiness were both classics. Chen Yijie felt that the title song of his next album, which had yet to be released, could already be decided. As for the high-pitched song in his heart, Chen Yijie thought that it would be better to wait until later. When I go back and have time, I'll record the accompaniment and demo for you. Yang Yi said to Chen Yijie. It doesn't matter. Yang Yi, if you don't have time, you can send me the music score and lyrics first. I'll show you the rest after I've recorded it. Chen Yijie was itching to do it. Why are you in such a hurry? Yang Yi laughed. Then you have to sing well for tomorrow's concert. Of course. By the way, Yang Yi, your singing is really good. The media's rumors are true. When will we collaborate on a song? Or I'll invite you to my concert. Let's sing a song together. How about that? Chen Yijie also appreciated Yang Yi. Chapter 464. Dad, please be careful. There was still some time before the concert started. Although they did not have to squeeze into the VIP room like the rest of the audience, there were still some steep stairs to walk. Yang Yi walked in front with Shi in his arms. He turned around to give Mo Henian a hand. After the showdown, Yang Yi also changed the way he addressed Mo Henian after Murphy purposely reminded him. However, Mo Henian waved his hand impatiently and said, I haven't reached the stage where I can't walk yet. You're carrying my granddaughter, so walk properly. Don't let her fall. Yang Yi could only smile bitterly and withdraw his hand. He secretly shook his head. He felt that Murphy was right. In the past, all the fathers in the world were the same. They did not know how to express their love, nor did they know how to accept love. However, he did not mind. Instead, he did what he should do as usual. Yang Yi did not enjoy the love of his parents in his previous life. Although Mo Henian and Yang Chongui did not know how to express their love, they used another way to show their care. Yang Yi felt that they should cherish it. When they reached the VIP room, Yang Yi held onto the railing and looked down at the audience. He finally felt the enthusiasm of the audience. The enormous Yangcheng Stadium was filled with more than 50,000 spectators, and the waving light sticks and support signs almost lit up the auditorium into a sea of stars. At this moment, Yang Huan also came up with bags of snacks and drinks. When she saw the luxurious room, she exclaimed in surprise, Wow! This is the VIP room. It really is the VIP of the VIP rooms. Although it was not as close to the stage as the VIP seats, it was still relatively close to the stage. Moreover, it was at an appropriate height, so the guests in the VIP room could see the entire stage clearly. The view was better than the VIP seats. What was more comfortable was that other than the sofa in the front row, there was also some space to move around, and a simple toilet. This way, they did not need to line up with the rest of the audience to use the toilet. It was Yang Huan's first time attending a concert, and she was able to sit in the VIP room. That was a great treatment. It's a pity that Sister Ding Xiang has to act as Gui's agent for the time being. She's not lucky. Yang Huan did not forget her good friend, and said with pity, Little auntie, sit here. Shishi jumped down from the sofa and pulled Yang Huan to sit beside her. Then she pointed to somewhere else and said, Papa, sit here. Grandpa, sit here. Oh, you've arranged everything, Yang Huan said with a smile. Are you your father's butler? The little girl laughed proudly. The concert began. Today, the song Murphy sang at the opening was quite special. It was not the popular Listen to the Sea, or I Came Across the Sea to See You, but the carefree Tan with a strong Chinese flavor. Of course, the main point was not the song, but Murphy's ancient costume for the opening. Her delicate hair was tied up in a bun, and the hair ornament was made of small braids. Without many accessories, the simple hairstyle made her look dignified and cute. Her long hair was fluttering behind her, as soft as black brocade. The 2 locks of black hair in front of her body were like willows in spring, softly hanging in front of her white dress, adding to her beauty. Of course, Murphy's hair was not long enough to hang between her legs. Naturally, it was the hairstylist who used a wig for her. However, the hairstyle was only the highlight. The most amazing thing was Murphy's ancient costume. It was as white as winter snow and as light as cicada's wings. Her long dress was swaying, and her sleeves were fluttering. Under the light of the stage, she seemed to be shrouded in a layer of light mist, making people feel as if they were in a dream. This was the ancient costume that Yang Yi had drawn with a pen according to his memory of the 06 version of Xiaolongnu's stage photo. Then he handed it to the master to make it carefully. It was not as simple as white gauze. The bright white bone pattern, the lotus-like stacked front lapel, and the tight wide belt could tie Mo Fei's slender waist. The white ancient costume, together with Murphy's beautiful and refined appearance, her smooth and flawless skin, and her somewhat indifferent expression gave people the feeling that she was a fairy who had descended to the mortal world. Murphy walked out of the long stage, accompanied by the light Chinese melody of the Carefree Tan. Her straightforwardness stunned the audience. More than 50,000 people in the audience exclaimed in surprise, probably having the same feeling in their hearts. She's as beautiful as a fairy. Although Yang Huan had seen how Murphy looked in this costume when she was trying it on at home, she still could not help but exclaim beside her brother. On the empty stage, in the huge screen projection, Mo Fei's fairy-like beauty was truly blossomed. Yang Yi was also proud of Murphy in his heart. He picked up his daughter so that the little girl could see clearly. He pointed at the stage and said, "Look, that's Mommy. Mommy is so beautiful." The little girl was also mesmerized. She murmured to herself, "When she grows up, you'll be as beautiful as Mommy." Yang Yi kissed his daughter's little face and said with a smile, "Time is hard to come by, and the autumn wind is tired of drifting." After exclaiming in amazement, Murphy began to sing. She controlled her voice to be ethereal, with a hint of vicissitudes and a hint of sadness hidden in her sweetness. She was narrating the story described in the Carefree Tan. The elegant and refined ancient costume beauty and the tranquil ancient song seemed to have brought the audience back to the past. They were mesmerized by the performance. Although the song was over, the fans still could not get out of this state. It took a long time for them to remember to applaud. The applause gradually sounded, and the tsunami-like applause and cheers suddenly drowned the whole stadium. "It's so beautiful. Why didn't I find this song so beautiful before?" Many fans began to blame themselves. They felt that their previous support for the song was too little. It was no wonder that there were too many excellent songs in this album, and the brilliance of songs such as "Listen to the Sea" and "Coming Across the Sea to See You" had overshadowed its brilliance. Now, Mo Fei's ancient costume interpretation had refreshed their understanding of this song. If the new song of Carefree Tan was still on the chart, the fans' love would make it to the top. Of course, this was just a hypothesis. After singing this song, Murphy had to go downstairs to change her clothes. Because her other songs were not Chinese songs, she was not used to this dress. Therefore, although the fans were still reluctant, Murphy gave the stage to Guizhi. She took the elevator and hurried to the backstage to change her clothes and hairstyle. Guizhi's appearance was somewhat affected by Murphy. The audience's reaction was relatively cold at first. However, the little fatty was indeed very suitable for the stage. He used a few simple words of self-ridicule, and used the joke of Su Shishir saying that he was not her prince because he was fat. Very quickly, the mood of the audience was stirred up, and there were kind laughs coming from the audience. "It's him." The micro-movie Fairy Tale was also popular all over the country in March. Under Guizhi's reminder, everyone recognized this fat Guang. After the atmosphere of the scene was stirred up, Guizhi sang Fairy Tale with the accompaniment of the band. "My sky, the stars are bright." When he sang the second verse and reached the climax again, Guizhi said in a gentle voice, "Everyone, let's sing together, okay? Let's sing together the most beautiful wish for the person we love." The band cooperated and stopped the accompaniment. When Guizhi shouted 1, 2, 3, they started again. "I'm willing to become the angel you love in the fairy tale. I'll open my hands and become wings to protect you." Guizhi sang as he put his hands to his ears. Sure enough, this song that resonated the most with the audience also won Murphy's fans to sing along. This stage presence was not like a newcomer who had just debuted. It was not like a rookie singer who had just stepped onto the big stage for the first time. Although there were some flaws in the singing, no one felt it. The audience of more than 50,000 people were infected by Guizhi's singing. Chapter 465. In terms of stage performance, Murphy couldn't compare to Guizhi. However, it couldn't be helped. Murphy didn't like to perform too ostentatiously. Her understanding of a concert was that she sang slowly on stage while the fans listened quietly. After Guizhi's warm-up ended, Murphy changed into a pair of plain jeans and a white t-shirt and went back on stage. She simply untied her braided hair and wig. Her beautiful hair hung down with a slight curl. This simple dressing made her look like a fairy who had blended into the mortal world. She had transformed into the beautiful sister next door who lived right beside everyone. Although Murphy's stage was simple and monotonous, she still used her beautiful voice to infect the audience and make them listen more attentively. Then they clapped and cheered even more passionately. The concert progressed steadily in Murphy's style. During this time, Chun Ijia went on stage and surprised the fans with his warm-up song. However, even Chun Ijia couldn't affect the quiet atmosphere of the concert. That was a characteristic that Murphy unintentionally created. Accompanied by Murphy's unique and intoxicating voice, the concert gradually came to an end. Unknowingly, it was late at night. She didn't have enough energy to listen to the entire concert. She didn't sleep in the afternoon, so the little girl didn't know when she fell asleep in her father's warm embrace. The private room wasn't sealed. Even though they were in Yangcheng, the spring night was still a little chilly. Fortunately, Yang Yi was prepared. He got Yang Huan to take out a small blanket from the bag and covered the little girl with it. Yang Yi tucked in the blanket to prevent the night breeze from sneaking in through the gap between Shishi's neck. Occasionally, he lowered his head to look at the little face on his chest. Under her closed eyelids, her long eyelashes curled up slightly. She was so beautiful that it made one want to take pity on her. This was a sleeping beauty. Looking at the little girl's sweet sleeping appearance at this moment, Yang Yi suddenly wanted to pinch her delicate little nose, but he was afraid of waking up the little girl who was sleeping soundly, so he could only give up. But at this time, Yang Yi suddenly heard the cheers of the fans. If they were shouting something else, Yang Yi wouldn't care, but they were shouting his name. Yang Yi, Yang Yi, Yang Yi. At first, it was rather chaotic. Some people were still shouting Yang Yi, but in the end, it was as if an invisible force had gathered them together. They shouted in unison, Yang Yi, Yang Yi. Yang Yi didn't know what had happened. He raised his head in confusion and looked at the stage. At this moment, the director of the scene had a wicked sense of humor. He turned the camera around and aimed it at Yang Yi, who was sitting in the private room. When Yang Yi's figure appeared on the big screen, the fans cheered again. What happened? Yang Yi turned to look at Yang Huan in confusion. They want you to go on stage and sing with sister-in-law, Yang Huan said with a smile. It turned out that Murphy had said that the next song would be the last one. But how could the fans, who had waited all night for Yang Yi and Murphy to sing together, be willing to listen? The tickets were about the same, so how could the people at Shanghai Station get to listen to Yang Yi and Murphy sing, but they didn't get to enjoy the same treatment? When some people started shouting to hear Yang Yi sing, Murphy had already explained that there was no Yang Yi's performance for this concert, but they still didn't give up. Some people's cheers eventually became everyone's cheers. Of course, this was the same phenomenon that every time a concert ended, there would always be fans shouting one more song reluctantly. It was impossible to satisfy every fan's request every time. Experienced stars could always communicate with their fans or beg for forgiveness by acting cute. But this time, the fans were not shouting one more song. Mo Fei, who lacked the ability to adapt, did not know how to ease the enthusiasm of the fans with gags. On the big screen, she looked a little helpless and isolated. How could he bear to see her in a difficult situation? Yang Yi looked at Murphy's awkward expression on the big screen and smiled. He gently handed the sleeping Shishi to Yang Huan and stood up from the sofa. Quick, cut the camera to him. The director could see what was happening in the private room and shouted excitedly through the headset. The big screen in the stadium once again switched to the camera lens. Yang Yi's action of standing up was seen by more than 50,000 fans. Wow, probably guessing what Yang Yi was going to do. The fans at the scene shouted excitedly. Due to the lighting, Murphy couldn't see Yang Yi on the stage, but the movement still caught her attention. She turned to look at the big screen. On the big screen, Yang Yi mouthed, "Wait for me." Then he turned and disappeared from the camera. Even though the fans couldn't understand, they could guess what Yang Yi meant. They discussed and cheered. It was quiet on the stage, but the audience was lively. Yang Yi finally walked onto the stage from backstage. He didn't wear any makeup or fancy clothes. He looked exactly the same as he did in the private room. He just walked onto the stage with a microphone. Even so, Yang Yi's casual clothes matched Mo Fei's jeans very well. No matter how you looked at it, the two of them looked like a pair on the stage. Murphy's heart was already moved by Yang Yi. She waited for Yang Yi to come up and gave him a hug. "Thank you," Murphy whispered guiltily in Yang Yi's ear. She felt that she always brought trouble to Yang Yi. Yang Yi smiled. He gently patted Murphy's waist and said, "What are you talking about? Isn't your business my business?" However, after Yang Yi went on stage, another problem arose. What song were they going to sing? It couldn't be "Want to Sing Me to You," because they didn't rehearse before. Yang Cheng's band didn't know the score, so it was impossible for them to come up with a new song. Yang Yi and Mo Fei discussed it and decided to follow the original plan of the concert and sing Mo Fei's last song, "Love Me Don't Leave Together." It just so happened that both men and women could sing this song. Although they didn't rehearse together, they could each sing a verse and then sing together at the climax. This division of labor was decided by Yang Yi and Murphy in just a few words. "At this time, I'm still the same. The loneliness of the night makes one sad." Yang Yi opened his mouth as the music started. He won a round of cheers from the audience. Although this song didn't show Yang Yi's singing skills were very illusory and needed to be compared to show it. Yang Yi's singing, with a slightly lazy voice, gave the song a different feeling. It was very different from Murphy's version. Not only was there a difference in the male and female voices, there was also a difference in the expression of emotions. Of course, they were both very good. To the fans, this was a huge surprise. Following that, Yang Yi and Murphy's tacit understanding gradually showed. Although there was no rehearsal between them, just a casual glance was enough to make the other party understand. Thus, whether they continued to sing or sang together, there were no mistakes caused by lack of practice. Especially during the climax, Yang Yi's singing together didn't affect Murphy's singing. Instead, it complemented Murphy's voice perfectly. "I feel that these two are really compatible. I hope they can continue to be happy." This was the unanimous thought of many fans. Although there weren't any new songs, although this was a rushed chorus and the songs weren't particularly suitable for a chorus, the fans were already satisfied. Finally, the concert came to an end amidst their endless applause. Murphy happily held Yang Yi's hand and walked down the stage side by side amidst the fans' blessings. But this was not the only happy thing that happened that night. Chapter 466. It was late at night, and the nanny van was quiet on the way back to the hotel. Everyone had been busy the whole day, and they didn't have the energy to talk. Ding Xiang was exhausted. She had been running around all day, and there were many things that she didn't have experience with, so it was very taxing on her brain. She rested her head on Yang Huan's shoulder and closed her eyes to rest. Don't ask why it wasn't Guizi, because Guizi was sitting in the same row as Mo Henian, trembling in fear. Murphy was also hugging Yang Yi's arm and leaning on Yang Yi. However, she didn't go to sleep because she was exhausted. Instead, she turned her head and stared at Shi, who was sleeping soundly in Yang Yi's arms, under the faint light from the streetlights outside the van. When the little girl was sleeping, her thin nose would flutter slightly as if it was the rhythm of life. Murphy would never get tired of looking at it. "Why aren't you sleeping?" Yang Yi asked gently after some time. Murphy sat up and stretched her sore waist and numb butt. Then, she pulled Yang Yi's hand and found a comfortable position to snuggle into Yang Yi's arm. She moved closer to Yang Yi's ear and whispered, "I'm hungry." If Yang Yi's voice was a little loud and could be heard in the quiet van, then Murphy's voice was almost inaudible. Only Yang Yi, who was close to her, could hear it. Feeling the fragrant breath in his ear, Yang Yi turned his head and saw Mo Fei's seemingly shy eyes. His heart suddenly skipped a beat. He put his arm around Mo Fei's soft shoulder, turned his head, and whispered in her delicate ear, "Then let's go back. When Dad goes back to his room to sleep, I'll give it to you." That was too explicit. Murphy's face instantly turned red. She sat up straight and clenched her fists shyly and impatiently, pounding Yang Yi's arm. "What's wrong?" Yang Yi was confused and looked at Murphy in confusion. After Murphy was done, she came over angrily and whispered into Yang Yi's ear. Although her voice was soft, it sounded like she was gnashing her teeth. "I said I'm hungry. I'm really hungry." Yang Yi suddenly realized that he had misunderstood and grinned. Murphy pinched Yang Yi's waist in embarrassment. She looked at him angrily and said with her eyes, "You're still laughing? It's all your fault." They were already an old married couple. What was there that couldn't be said? Yang Yi leaned over to Murphy's ear and whispered, "You can't blame me for this. It's your dad's fault. Our dad came and made me hold it in for so long." These words made Murphy so embarrassed that she buried her head in Yang Yi's arms and fought with Shishi for the position. Although Yang Yi teased his wife a lot, he still felt sorry for her. When they arrived at the hotel, he asked Mo Shaowan to send Murphy back to her room. Shishi also asked Murphy to carry her upstairs. Yang Yi went to the old snack shop outside the hotel to order Murphy's favorite, fresh shrimp wonton and bamboo noodles. Yang Yi already knew that Murphy, who used to live in Harbor City, liked to eat this kind of bamboo noodles. It was chewy, especially when paired with the chewy shrimp wonton and sweet soup. Yang Yi could eat 2 bowls at a time. Of course, Yang Yi only packed 1 portion. It was already so late, so she just needed to eat a little to fill her stomach. If she was too full, Mo Fei, who had been tired for several days, didn't know when she would be able to fall asleep. When he returned to the hotel, Yang Yi, who didn't deliberately change his clothes, was still recognized by the reporters who surrounded the hotel entrance. They were so surprised that they kept taking pictures of their cameras. The flashes almost blinded Yang Yi. However, Yang Yi didn't care too much. It wasn't like he was going to do anything bad. After squeezing through the reporters, Yang Yi finally returned to the hotel room. Mo Shaowan was still sitting with Murphy. Yang Yi smiled as he lifted the bag in his hand and said, "Look, I bought it for you. Fresh shrimp wonton and bamboo noodles." Murphy stood up happily and said, "You really bought it? It's so late, and you're still selling noodles?" "I didn't know at first, but after asking the front desk, I found out that there's an old shop near our hotel. It's also open at night." Yang Yi helped Murphy open the bag and removed the lid of the takeout box. Murphy suddenly frowned. She lowered her head in disbelief and sniffed carefully. However, she quickly raised her head and said with some disgust, "Why is it so fishy?" "Is it fishy?" Yang Yi picked it up and sniffed it himself. He even tasted a mouthful of soup. Then he looked at Murphy in confusion. "It's not fishy? Is it different from what you used to eat? It has the sweetness of shrimp. But I think it's disgusting. I feel a little nauseous just by smelling it." Murphy looked at Yang Yi pitifully. Mo Shaowan sat on the sofa and ate the dog food. She asked in confusion, "Sis, isn't this what you wanted to eat?" "Yes, but I don't think it's the taste I want." Murphy turned around and said, "Not the taste?" Yang Yi frowned. "Could it be that this shop is not authentic?" Mo Shaowan said thoughtfully, "Sis, I think your appetite has changed a lot recently. Either you can't eat, or you don't want to eat this or that. Haven't you noticed that there are many things that you used to like to eat, but recently, you don't like to eat them? That won't do. You have to eat a little," Yang Yi said with concern. "You're so tired. If you don't eat, you won't be able to keep up with the nutrition." "Ahem, brother-in-law, that's not what I meant." Mo Shaowan turned to look at Murphy and said hesitantly, "Sis, don't you think that the situation now is exactly the same as 5 years ago?" Murphy was stunned. As if her words had broken a dream, Murphy connected the suspicious symptoms that she had neglected because of her father's attack. This was exactly the same as 5 years ago. At that time, she hadn't had her period, her appetite wasn't good, and she hated this and that. Moreover, after a long time, she had vomited so much that she thought she was sick. That was when she went to the hospital for a checkup. She didn't think that she would still be so careless after giving birth. If it weren't for Mo Xiaozhuan's reminder, she wouldn't have reacted. "Also, didn't you say that your period hasn't come this month? It's been a few weeks." Mo Shaowan was still giving Murphy hints even though she had just thought of it. Yang Yi wasn't so stupid that he couldn't understand Mo Xiaozhuan's hints. He reacted and asked in surprise, "You're saying that Murphy, she's pregnant again?" Murphy still couldn't believe it. She turned around and looked at Yang Yi pitifully and asked, "But, don't you always wear condoms?" Mo Shaowan felt awkward when she heard this. However, since he had said it so bluntly in front of her, she could pretend that she was an innocent child who didn't understand. Yes, he always wore condoms. But Yang-yi suddenly remembered and said to Murphy, "That day in my hometown, we didn't wear condoms. Didn't you say that we couldn't do the drill if we wore condoms?" That's right. That night, after hearing Murphy's and Dong Yue's words, she wanted to have a son, so she didn't let Yang-yi drive safely. But the next day, when Murphy and Yang-yi considered that they couldn't find time to get pregnant, they wore condoms again. Could it be that in just one night, they were able to set the world on fire again? And why did he say again? Murphy was stunned for a while before she blushed and said embarrassedly, "Why are you talking about this here? Shawan is here." Mo Shawan rolled her eyes and lamented in her heart. "Only now do you know that Shawan is here? What were you doing earlier? Now is not the time to think about this. The important question is whether you're pregnant or not." Mo Shawan stood up and said with a bitter smile, "I'll go buy you something else to eat. This bowl of wonton noodles is mine. Rest well tonight and go to the hospital tomorrow for a checkup. We'll know when we see the results." A pregnancy test kit would work, but it was said that a checkup at the hospital was more accurate and reliable. In fact, Murphy had already come to a conclusion in her heart, but she couldn't be sure without the real test results. It was too late now, so she could only do as Mo Shawan said and go to the hospital tomorrow. However, Yang-yi, who had received a surprise, probably wouldn't be able to rest well tonight. Chapter 467. At around 7 in the morning, Mu Yuqing, who had been cultivating for the whole night, stretched in front of the computer. Then he got up, yawned, and high-fived his colleagues in the project team. "We finally got it done. Everyone, go back and rest early. You've worked hard." For people in the IT industry, this kind of life was normal. When it came to a project, day and night would be reversed, and they would have to work overtime continuously. After completing this project, he could basically relax for a period of time. Mu Yuqing didn't think too much about it. He hurriedly got off work and took the subway home before the crowd of people arrived. He just wanted to lie in bed and have a good sleep. Mu Yuqing had a car, but the roads in Yangcheng were often congested, especially during rush hours, so he basically didn't drive to work. Taking the subway was also good. Mu Yuqing made a good discovery in the subway today. "Hey brother, can I take a look at your newspaper?" Mu Yuqing pointed at the entertainment newspaper in the hands of the man sitting opposite him, and asked excitedly. The man looked at Mu Yuqing's well-dressed but thick dark-eye bags and felt a little pitiful, so he stuffed the newspaper over. Mu Yuqing thanked him as he flipped it open, and found the news he had just seen. Model husband is Yang-yi. He appeared on the streets of Yangcheng in the middle of the night for her. The title was good. It was a classic suspenseful title. It was half hidden, and didn't tell you the specific incident. Mu Yuqing was attracted by this title, and couldn't help but take a look. The content was actually nothing much. It was just Yang-yi going out in the middle of the night to buy supper for Murphy. The story made up by the reporters was actually correct. But Mu Yuqing still scratched his head in annoyance. He actually didn't know that Yang-yi was in Yangcheng. Murphy was holding a concert in Yangcheng, so he should have bought a ticket to see it. Although he really wasn't free last night, the newspaper said that Yang-yi sang at Murphy's concert again. Although someone from Sahara Publishing had already revealed on Yang-yi's personal website that Yang-yi was going to hold a signing event, who knew when this guy would do it? I don't know if Yang-yi went back yet. Yangcheng is my home ground. It's such a pity that I couldn't receive him personally. Mu Yuqing shook his head regretfully, but he still returned the newspaper. He should go back to wash up and sleep. Yang-yi hadn't returned yet. At this moment he was bringing Murphy to Yangcheng's third hospital for a checkup. Fu Jun had helped him contact this place, so he didn't have to worry about his secret being leaked. Of course, he couldn't bring everyone with him. That would make him a big target and easily expose himself. Only Shi and Mo Henian, whose face had darkened when he heard that Murphy might be pregnant again, followed by Mo Henian. There was no need to line up. Murphy, who had an empty stomach, went back to the waiting room that the doctor had specially provided for them. They still had to wait for about an hour for the results. Breakfast was provided in the hospital. Young-yi waited for Murphy to come back and gave her some instructions. Then he went to get breakfast for her. At this time Shishi, who didn't know what had happened, ran over curiously. She looked at Murphy's arm, which was pressed with a cotton swab. She was a little scared, but she still asked with concern, "Mom, does it hurt?" "It hurts." Murphy purposely frowned as she said. "Then what should we do?" the girl asked worriedly. "Come and kiss Mama. Then it won't hurt anymore." Mo-Fei smiled and moved her face closer to him. When the girl heard this, she reached out her little hands and hugged her mom's face. Then she gave her mom a kiss on the cheek. After the kiss, Shishi looked at her mom nervously and asked, "Mom, are you feeling better?" "Mom, I'm fine. Thank you, Shishi." Murphy giggled as she kissed her on the forehead. However, Cece wasn't particularly happy. She continued to chatter. "Mama, I also know that injections are very painful. That's why I don't like injections." "But if you're sick, you still need injections." Murphy threw the cotton swab into the trash can. "But I don't want injections." Shishi hugged Murphy's knee and mumbled sadly, "Mom, can I not get injections?" "She didn't say that you need injections now. You're not sick. Mom just gave an example. She said that you need injections only if you're sick." Murphy smiled. "Then Mom, can I not get sick?" Shishi pursed her lips and said pitifully. At this time, Young-yi came back with a breakfast tray. There was an egg, a bowl of porridge, and a small plate of pickled radish. He took Murphy's share because everyone else had eaten breakfast. When he asked Mohinian earlier, he received a big black face. "Come and eat breakfast. This is all the breakfast in the hospital. I don't know what you like to eat, so I'll take one of each. Just eat something simple," Young-yi said softly to Murphy. However, before Murphy answered, Shishi pitifully ran over, hugged her father's leg and said, "Papa, I don't want injections." "You don't want injections? Why do you need injections?" Young-yi smiled and rubbed the little girl's head, and said, "Today I brought Mom here for a checkup." But if Shishi is sick, can we not get injections? It hurts." Shishi looked at her father pitifully with her big eyes and pleaded. Young-yi looked at Murphy, who was secretly laughing, and said helplessly, "It's okay. We don't need injections. We can get better with medicine." The little girl was happy. She climbed up the chair, squeezed next to her mother, and curiously asked, "Mom, what do you want for breakfast?" "You see, there are eggs, porridge, and this fermented radish." Murphy didn't understand the name of this dish, so she had to give it a name. "There is no meat in the porridge. It's not good." Shishi shook her head. Murphy had already started eating. She didn't have much appetite, but when she picked up a piece of pickled radish and put it in her mouth, the cold, sour, and sweet taste suddenly made her eyes light up. "Hey, this is delicious." Murphy felt that her appetite came back. She was eating the porridge with relish. She picked up a piece of pickled radish and said, "Shishi, this is delicious. Do you want to try it?" Shishi nodded vigorously, opened her small mouth, and bit the pickled radish that her mother picked up. The taste was really good. The little girl ate with a mouthful of saliva. "It's delicious. Mom, I want more." "Then what about Mom? Mom doesn't have enough to eat." Murphy picked up several pieces. She didn't want to eat eggs. She wanted to eat this with porridge. "What's so difficult about this? I'll get you another plate." Young-yi stood up and said eagerly. After some time, the doctor finally came in with the test results. Young-yi, who was a little anxious, hurriedly stood up, followed by Young-yi. Like Young-yi, the old man was even more nervous than Murphy. "Dr. Do, how are the results?" Young-yi asked. His expression was very interesting. He wanted to know the results, but he was also worried that it wasn't the kind he wanted. He was very nervous. The doctor smiled slightly and handed over the test results, saying, "Congratulations. Miss Mo is really pregnant. From now on, you have to pay more attention to Miss Mo's health. Don't overwork yourself." Young-yi could no longer hear the doctor's words. "She's really pregnant." Young-yi turned around excitedly and hugged Mohinian, who was closest to him. He said excitedly, "Dad, Murphy is really pregnant. You're going to have another grandson or granddaughter." Emo Henian pushed him away with a look of disdain. All right, I can hear you. You don't have to repeat yourself. Actually, the old man was also very happy. He didn't particularly care about Yang Yi's slightly offensive behavior. It was just that he couldn't show Yang Yi a pleasant expression. Yang Yi didn't care. He was still in a state of ecstasy. He turned around and hugged Murphy in his arms. He said proudly, "Did you hear that? You're really pregnant." "I heard it all." Murphy looked at Yang Yi, who was as happy as a child, and giggled. At first, Yang Yi wanted to pick her up high, but he was worried about hurting the child, so he nervously put her down. He carefully supported Murphy and said, "Be careful when you walk in the future. In the next few months, you'll be a panda and need special care." Murphy felt Yang Yi's thoughtfulness and couldn't help but laugh at his nervous look. She smiled and said, "Are you stupid? You're just pregnant. How old is the child? Do you have to be so careful?" After all, Murphy had given birth before. She knew what the process was like. However, Yang Yi's silly look still made her feel a burst of warmth. She wasn't as pitiful as before. It was good to have someone to protect her. Yang Yi was still very excited. He thanked and sent the doctor away. He ran back and picked up Shishi, who was still in a daze, and kissed her. "Aya. Papa, what's wrong with you?" The little girl shrank her neck and giggled. "Shishi, your mom is going to give birth to a brother or sister for you. Are you happy?" Yang Yi asked with a smile. "Really? Where are my brother and sister?" Shishi finally understood and asked in surprise. In fact, the little girl had long wanted to be an elder sister. Since Chen Shiryan told them that her mother was going to have a baby, Shishi, who was envious, had always wanted to be an elder sister like Chen Shiryan. "Your brother and sister haven't come out yet. They're still in their mother's belly. You'll have to wait for more than 9 months before you can see them," Yang Yi said with a smile. Chapter 468. On the night that she realized that she might be pregnant, Emo Fei was actually a little conflicted. Because she had experienced the difficulties of making a comeback, and it was not easy for her to return to her peak. If she was pregnant, wouldn't she have to wait a few more years like 5 years ago? However, when the results came out, Murphy saw that Yang Yi was as happy as a child. He even dared to stroke the tiger's whiskers and hug his father. She understood what Yang Yi was thinking, and let go of some of her messy thoughts. Even if the road to stardom was bumpy, family was the most important thing. "Come on, give me your bag. I'll help you carry it." Yang Yi's attentive voice rang in her ears again. Murphy came to her senses, and saw Yang Yi's big hand reaching out to her. They had just arrived at the airport, and were about to take the plane back to Jiang City. When they got out of the car, Yang Yi wanted to take all the responsibilities for Murphy, and was about to help Murphy up. "What are you doing? This is my bag." Murphy was touched and found it funny. "No, you carry it. I'll carry it for you. If you want anything, I'll give it to you later," Yang Yi said. Murphy said angrily, "No, I'm just pregnant. You don't have to treat me as a pregnant woman. It's so awkward. It's just carrying a bag. It's not difficult." Yang Yi scratched his head and said with a smile, "I just feel that I should make it up to you twice as much as I was not by your side when you were pregnant with Shishi last time. I let you suffer so much." Murphy was stunned for a moment. She was moved like steam in her heart. She pursed her lips and looked around at Emo Shawan and Yang Yi, who were snickering. She put her hand in Yang Yi's and said shyly, "Let's go." The two of them walked in front. Cece carried a small school bag and followed behind her parents. The little girl, who was a little neglected, pouted and muttered, "I don't need Papa to hold my hand. I can walk by myself." After the plane took off, she couldn't sit still. She walked up and down the aisle while holding a milk bottle and drinking milk. Her milk bottle was not a baby bottle. It was a small bottle that was specially made for children. There was a straw that could be used to suck and drink the water inside. It was more popular with children. The cute little girl blinked her big eyes and looked around, attracting the attention of many tourists. A few young ladies, uncles, and aunties liked her and greeted her. "Hello, little cutie." "I'm not little cutie, I'm Shishi." Shishi moved her mouth away from the milk bottle and whispered shyly. Suddenly, A pair of large hands reached over and picked her up. The little girl was shocked. She turned her head and saw that it was her father. Her shock turned into laughter as she giggled and twisted around in her father's arms. You can't walk around and affect others. Shishi, do you remember what Papa said to you? Yang Yi said to Shishi while nodding apologetically to the passengers. Your daughter? A woman who was chatting with Shishi just now asked with a smile. Well, yes. Yang Yi nodded. She's very cute and beautiful. Her eyes are as if they can talk. The woman said. Haha, thank you for your compliment. Yang Yi nodded to the woman and turned back with Shishi in his arms. Papa, she called me little cutie, but I'm not. I'm Shishi. Before they went far, Shishi's childish voice came over. She said you're cute. She's praising you. Yang Yi's voice also came over. And you're not polite. You should call her sister. No, she called me little cutie, but I'm not little cutie. I told my sister that my name is Shishi. Shishi went back to her seat and continued to explain. Well, our Shishi is the smartest. Yang Yi couldn't understand. He thought that Shishi just got into the wrong logic, but he didn't argue with Shishi. He just smiled and scratched the little girl's nose. Murphy, do you want to eat anything? Yang Yi turned his head and motioned to Murphy, who was listening to music with headphones and preparing to sleep, to take off her headphones. Then he said, I see ice cream, drinks, fruits, bread and so on. No, I just had lunch. Murphy shook her head. Shishi didn't wait for her father to ask her. She got up from her seat to attract her father's attention. Then she pouted and said, Papa, I want to eat ice cream. You can't eat ice cream when you're on the plane. What if your stomach hurts later? When we get off the plane, I'll buy you more delicious ice cream when we get home. Yang Yi said. Then I want strawberry ice cream. Shishi said. Okay, no problem. Yang Yi said with a smile. Now, do you want to eat something else? There are also fruits and drinks. In fact, the little girl was full. She shook her head and said, I don't want to eat any more. Then sit down. It's not safe to stand on the chair. Yang Yi took his daughter's hand and said softly. Shishi, however, acted coquettishly. I want to sit with Papa. Yang Yi had no choice but to carry her over and let her sit on his broad legs. Shishi contentedly twisted her little butt, squeezed into her father's arms, and comfortably lay down. Yang Yi tidied up Shishi's pressed hair. The little girl's hair was only slightly trimmed and never cut short. It was thick and had a little size. Shishi felt her father's care as usual. The feeling of being left out in her heart disappeared. Her crescent-shaped eyes curved and she smiled sweetly. What makes you so happy? Yang Yi asked with a smile. I don't know. The little girl twisted her little head on her father's chest and giggled. Well, is it because you want to have a younger brother or sister? So happy. Yang Yi was worried that others would hear, so he whispered in his daughter's ear. Papa, let me ask you. The little girl seemed to think of something. She turned her little head and curiously asked, Why is a younger brother? Yang Yi made a shushing gesture to her, and then leaned over to her father's ear. The little girl whispered in her father's ear, Why is a younger brother or sister in mom's belly? Because when a new baby is born, it has to live in its mother's belly for 10 months. When it grows up, it can come out. Yang Yi had to explain to Shishi. No, Mom said that Shishi fell from the sky. Shishi pouted and said. Yang Yi was stunned for a moment, and then he couldn't help laughing. Fell from the sky. He knew that a beauty fell from the sky, but he didn't expect Shishi to also fall from the sky. Well, you fell from the sky, but you have to live in Mom's belly for 10 months. During those 10 months, Mom will have to work hard. Yang Yi held back his laughter and said to Shishi. Really? Shishi asked confusedly. Of course. Yang Yi smiled slightly. Chapter 469. When the plane landed, Yang Yi and Murphy were caught by the reporters who had been waiting for a long time. Although Yang Yi and the others had successfully brought Shishi and Old Master Mo into the nanny van, Yang Yi and Murphy were still surrounded by reporters for their interview. It was not that they could not escape, but when the reporters were chasing after Yang Yi and the others, there was a girl who was so crowded that her right shoe was trampled off. She did not even bother to pick it up and hopped after them barefoot. She looked a little pitiful. Murphy, who was feeling sorry for her, stopped and said to her gently, "Go pick up your shoe first. Don't worry, I can answer one of your questions." Young Yi also stayed. He was originally the target of the reporters, and he could not leave Murphy alone to face the reporters. Mo Shawan meow meow meow. However, if he stayed, he could only act as a human shield for Mo Fei. Mo Shawan was more experienced. She said, "Don't worry everyone. How about this? Each reporter can only ask one question. Our time is limited, and everyone has worked hard. Let's do it one by one. The earlier we finish the questions, the earlier we can go back to rest, right?" The reporters asked all kinds of questions, but the interesting thing was that the second question was directed at Yang Yi. "Yang Yi, I want to ask you a question. When will you debut? Will you release a new album? Will you hold a solo concert?" The fans are already very excited. A reporter said, "That's already 3 questions." Mo Shawan shouted, "It looks like 3 questions, but it's actually just 1. The reporter smiled shyly. Yang Yi did not expect that the reporter would ask him. He patted Mo Xiaojuan's shoulder and said with a smile, "It's okay, let me do it. As for your question, I want to say that I haven't decided when I will debut. But even if I do, I won't be a qualified artist. At most, I will release an album and sing for everyone to listen to. So I hope everyone will focus on Murphy." "Alright, next," Mo Xiaowan said. "Hey Yang Yi, you still haven't answered whether you're going to hold a solo concert or when you're going to debut." The reporter said anxiously. A reporter at the side chuckled and said, "I don't think there's anything wrong with it. He only asked you 1 question, and you asked 3. Then, Yang Yi answered one of your questions. It's totally okay." After a while, the group of reporters finally finished asking their questions. In the end, only the female reporter whose shoes had been stepped on was left. She didn't seem to be very experienced and asked nervously, "Murphy, I want to ask you. Last night, your husband went out in the middle of the night to buy wonton noodles. Did he buy it for you? How dare he ask such a question?" Yang Yi was also somewhat surprised. He didn't expect the reporters to be so resourceful. They could even investigate the details of wonton noodles. Of course, he didn't know that this female reporter was just using other people's reports to express her opinion. "Are you sure you want to ask?" Murphy asked in surprise. She even kindly gave the reporter a chance. "Do you want to ask another question?" No need," the female reporter said awkwardly. "Well, it's true. Because it was late after the concert last night. I told Yang Yi that I was a little hungry in the car. Then, after getting out of the car, he went to buy me my favorite fresh shrimp wonton bamboo noodles." Murphy was kind-hearted, so she said more. However, she didn't know that she had unintentionally spread dog food to the entire nation. After returning home, Murphy was called to the balcony by Mo Henian for a chat. Yang Yi didn't want to eavesdrop, so he brought Shishi with him to organize the toys they brought back from Yangcheng. They were mainly plush toys from the souvenir shop in Yangcheng Zoo. When the girl expressed her interest, Fu Jun waved his hand and bought a lot for her. "Where is this gorilla? On the 2nd floor?" Yang Yi asked as he held up a palm-sized gorilla plushie. There was a large cabinet in the bedroom. Yang Yi specially prepared it for Shishi to store her toys. "Put it there. I want to put it with this," Shishi said as she took out the baboon plushie. "What's this monkey with permed hair? Do you remember what it's called?" Yang Yi purposely didn't take the plushie as he tested his daughter. "Hee, I know. It's called a baboon." The girl raised her head as her smile revealed a few pearly white teeth. She was extremely adorable. She seemed to be saying, "This isn't a test for me." Yang Yi snapped his fingers and said, "That's right, you're right." Then there was a giraffe plushie. This long-necked plushie was Shishi's favorite. When she saw her father take it out, she excitedly pounced on it. I don't want this on top. I want to sleep with it." The little girl hugged the giraffe plushie and refused to let go as she happily said, "Then I can't let you play with it now. Dad has to wash it. After it's clean and dried, I'll give it to you. Otherwise, there will be a lot of bacteria, like little worms, that will drill into your stomach. When the time comes, your stomach will hurt." Yang Yi said as he wasn't exaggerating. All right then. She reluctantly let go of her hand. Her gaze was still closely following her father's hand as she watched him put the giraffe aside. At this time, Murphy pushed open the bedroom door with a strange look on her face and said, Yang Yi, I have something to tell you. Outside, including in front of she was still shy and directly called Yang Yi's name. Only when the two of them were together in private would they lovingly call each other husband or wife. What's the matter? So mysterious? Yang Yi put down the plushie in his hand and came out with Murphy. Behind them, she saw her father walking away. Her eyes rolled, and then she lied on the bed. As she was spinning, she accidentally touched the giraffe plushie. Then she giggled and took it to play with it. After Yang Yi and Murphy came out, Murphy said to Yang Yi with some embarrassment, My mom is coming too. What? Yang Yi was a little surprised, but he quickly corrected his attitude and said with a smile, Our mom is coming, that's a good thing. Welcome, warmly welcome. No, what my dad means is that he wants us to have the wedding as soon as possible. We can't delay it until my belly is big. Murphy looked at Yang Yi apologetically. She said this because she also had the same idea. She didn't want to step on the red carpet with a big belly. The photos might not look good. Originally, according to their previous discussion, Yang Yi and Murphy would have a Chinese wedding in Anqing's hometown first. Then Yang Yi and Murphy would go to America to have a Western wedding. It could be considered a wedding in both families. Of course, the original plan was to wait until Yang Qing got married first, then Murphy and Tianmei's contract ended. Then they would have the wedding. However, the plan couldn't keep up with the changes. Who asked Murphy to suddenly get pregnant? And Mo Henian couldn't wait any longer. He had already called Zhou Mingyu to come over, and then they would go to Yang Yi's hometown together. The two families had discussed and decided to hold the two weddings together. So that's the problem. Yang Yi nodded and said with a smile. It depends on what you think. No matter what decision you make, I'll support you. They were talking in the corridor, and Mo Henian couldn't help it. He walked over and said reproachfully, The wedding isn't a matter of whether Fei is willing or not. You're already husband and wife. This wedding should have been held long ago. How can you continue to delay it? Murphy's opinion was actually very obvious. Yang Yi discussed it with her and decided that they would hold the wedding in advance. Chapter 470. It had been 2 days since the test results came out, but Murphy's mother still hadn't arrived. She wasn't in a rush like Mo Henian, who left as soon as he said he would. She also needed some time to pack her luggage, visa, plane tickets, and other issues. Yang Yi and Murphy didn't need to put all their work aside. This time, they were mentally prepared and simply bought some necessities for their mother-in-law. Yang Yi didn't idle around either. He needed to arrange the work at hand in advance, such as the new movie The Fugitive. Today, Yang Yi asked Mo Xiaowan to come over and sign some contracts for the new movie with Du Yuanlei. Mo Xiaowan arrived early. She was happily talking to Yang Yi. Brother-in-law, you don't know how wonderful the expression on Sister Ling's face was after she told her about this. Although Murphy's pregnancy hadn't been announced to the media yet, she still reported it to the company. Okay, didn't Sister Ling also express an understanding attitude later? Murphy was afraid that Mo Xiaowan would say something too unpleasant, so she quickly said, It's not good for us to speak ill of others behind their backs. Pfft, I'm just telling the truth. She even wanted to arrange 6 more concerts for you, in addition to countless commercial performances. Mo Xiaowan pursed her lips and said, Only now did she relent and say that it's up to you. The company won't interfere in anything. Mo Xiaowan even imitated Niu Meiling's sullen tone. Yes, there were still a few months left in the contract. In the end, she couldn't continue to earn money and had to force a smile to congratulate Murphy. With Niu Meiling's personality, she must be very depressed. Mo Xiaowan didn't know how to describe Niu Meiling's hopeless expression. She had bumped into Murphy's 2 pregnancies. Just thinking about it made her want to break down. Actually, I still want to sing a few concerts. Murphy saw Yang Yi looking over and quickly explained. I'm just saying. Now that I'm pregnant, we have to be careful. Yang Yi waved his hand and smiled. That's not what I meant. I support you to work, but don't overwork yourself. According to the books, it's good for a woman to work moderately during pregnancy. For example, she can maintain a regular lifestyle. It's easy to become lazy when resting at home. If she's unwilling to exercise, it's not good for weight control and delivery. Also, going out to work and interacting with others is also good for maintaining a good attitude. For the past 2 days, Yang had specially bought some books to read. From the books on how to be a pregnant woman, he had learned some knowledge about pregnancy so that he could take better care of Murphy. So, I feel that you don't have to retire and wait for labor, like you did 5 years ago. That's not fair to you. Do what you need to do. Stop work 1 or 2 months before the due date, and wait for delivery with peace of mind. As for after giving birth to the baby, you can continue to sing after recuperating, Yang Yi said. Murphy was stunned. She didn't expect Yang Yi to say something like that. She was prepared to temporarily give up her career. Thank you, Yang Yi, Murphy said softly as she grabbed Yang Yi's hand. Mo Shaowan was jealous. She shook her head and said, Anyway, we're the ones in charge now. Sis, what do you want to do? We'll tell Sister Ling. Anyway, it's Sister Ling who's in the wrong, not us. Who asked her to leak the news? Mo Shaowan was talking about Du Luan. In the past 2 days, the police had investigated Du Luan's transaction records with the entertainment tabloids. This investigation caused an uproar in Tianmei. Including Zhu Jie, no one thought that the person who sold them out was the usually inconspicuous manager Du Luan. What shocked Niu Meiling even more was that Zhenzhen was also involved. According to Du Luan's phone records, the police had asked Zhenzhen to go over and understand the situation. However, Zhenzhen wasn't a woman with a strong mental state. She couldn't resist the police's sharp questioning, and spilled everything without holding anything back. This time, Du Luan's question of how he got the information was finally answered. It wasn't Jianchua, but Jianchua's own people who were close to her. However, the police came to a conclusion. Du Luan must have absconded with the money. This person didn't have any family. His parents had passed away, and he didn't have much contact with his relatives. Now he had disappeared without a trace. The 600,000 in his card was also gone. Compared to Zhenzhen's confession, where Du Luan wasn't willing to share the money with her, it could be inferred that Du Luan couldn't bear to part with the money. Plus, he was worried about being exposed, so he took the money and left Jiangcheng. As for Du Luan's whereabouts, naturally, they couldn't find out. Maybe he was hiding in some city, or maybe he had already left the country. As for Du Luan's investigation, because Tianmei wasn't interested in continuing to tangle with the police didn't pursue the matter further. It looked like an obvious economic crime, not a criminal case. The police weren't that enthusiastic. Of course, this matter wasn't over yet within Tianmei. Although Zhenzhen didn't go to the extent of being imprisoned, what she had done was despised by everyone. The shocked Jianchua even scolded her for being a traitor. Zhu Jie was also ashamed. He now knew that it wasn't Jianchua or Teacher Ko who had done it, but his own manager who had betrayed Yang Yi. In order to make up for it, Zhu Jie repeatedly asked the company to freeze Zhenzhen. She could avoid the death penalty, but she couldn't escape punishment. Zhenzhen had done something she shouldn't have, and she finally got the punishment she deserved. As for Du Luan, Zhu Jie really didn't know what to do. He could only tell Yang Yi everything. Yang Yi was the only person who knew everything. He pretended to communicate with Zhu Jie, and then reluctantly chose to forgive Zhu Jie. This made Zhu Jie feel grateful. So on Niu Meiling's side, on one hand, Du Luan had exposed the matter, so she was in the wrong. On the other hand, Zhu Jie added fuel to the fire. She could only give up on some of her original plans and try her best to be nice to Murphy. She wanted Murphy to be like Sun Wukong, jumping out of the 5 elements and no longer under the company's control. She could do whatever she wanted. Mo Shaowan, Yang Yi, and Murphy were chatting when Du Yuanlei, who had just finished her class, finally rushed over. As for signing the contract, because they had worked together on Fairy Tale, they were already familiar with Du Yuanlei. As for the film's investment, Yang Yi had also discussed it with Du Yuanlei. All the funds for the film would be provided by Yang Yi and Murphy's studio. Although it was a low-budget film, Yang Yi still gave Du Yuanlei enough financial support to make the film as good as possible. If they were going to shoot, they wanted to shoot the best. What about the actors? Mr. Yang, will you choose with me? Du Yuanlei asked after signing the contract. I don't have time. You choose the actors according to your own standards. The basic requirements are actually explained in the script. As long as they meet those requirements, it will be fine, Yang Yi said. When I come back from my hometown, I will see if the actors you choose are qualified. Du Yuanlei said hesitantly. What about the candidate for Wang Mai? Can Shishi play the role? Shishi is going to act again? Murphy was interested. No, Shishi's personality is very different from the character in the script. So I think Shishi is not very suitable. Yang Yi quickly explained to Murphy. I think Shishi likes acting. As long as we explain it to her clearly, Shishi should be able to act very well. Du Yuanlei was still a little stubborn. You'd better audition for child actors outside. Don't consider Shishi for the time being. Yang Yi didn't want Shishi to come into contact with the entertainment industry too early, even if she liked acting. Child actors became famous at a young age, but there were not many who could maintain their glory after adulthood. If they became ordinary people, they would be ridiculed by those entertainment tabloids. Even if they didn't stay in the entertainment industry, they would still be compared from time to time. What's more, Yang Yi felt that Shishi was still enjoying her free and carefree childhood. Filming was too hard, and he couldn't bear to see his daughter suffer in the sun and rain on the set. Chapter 471. Yang Yi had a lot of things to do. In the past 2 days, he had taken the time to go to Sahara Publishing House and received Hu Da and Chang Zi, who had come to visit with Liu Benji. TU and Sahara Publishing House had a good relationship and had been in a cooperative state. Digging up excellent online literature for physical publication was also a major business of Sahara Publishing House. Hu Da and Chang Zi came over mainly to talk to Yang Yi about the electronic publishing license of White Knight. White Knight had been released for a month, and the physical sales had unexpectedly squeezed into the top 10 of the monthly list. One had to know that this was not the new book list. Moreover, White Knight was a relatively niche mystery literature. It could be said that it was quite a miracle to have such results. After all, not everyone was willing to read mystery literature. Most readers preferred literary works or romance novels with a slightly lighter and more sunny plot. Of course, a work like Journey in White Knight, that described the protagonist in such a horrifying way, should have a much narrower audience. The reason why it was able to gain a small popularity was that Yang Yi and Mo Fei's marriage was suddenly exposed. It had to be said that this was not the hype they wanted. Although it had caused them a lot of trouble, it had brought them benefits in some ways. It was no wonder that some people were obsessed with hype and did not hesitate to pour dirty water on themselves. It was not unacceptable for White Knight to launch an electronic publication a month after its release. In addition, Chiyu's conditions were not bad, so Yang Yi signed the relevant contract with them. The day before we left, Global Pictures called our editorial department and said that they want to buy the film and television rights of your Prison Break. Before leaving, Hu Da relayed the news to Yang Yi. Global Pictures, this was not some small film company. In America's Hollywood, it was rated as one of the 8 major film and television production companies. This was not only an evaluation in terms of capital operation, but also in terms of the creation of film and television works and box office revenue. Global Pictures could be called a giant crocodile. Of course, the Chinese film market in this world was even larger, and Global Pictures would not sit idly by. It also had a subsidiary in China, and this time, it was Global Pictures' China subsidiary that contacted you. According to Hu Da's explanation, the current situation of online literature adaptations was still relatively unclear. Apart from Yang Yi's Soldier's Assault and Drawing Sword, most of them were small fries. Either the director was a rookie, or the investor was not strong enough. Even though Chun Fengchen and Yang Yi's collaboration had caused quite a stir, and attracted the attention of many established film and television companies, just like today's global film industry, most of them were on the sidelines and very few took action. Global Pictures had been paying attention to Prison Break since the beginning of the year. The current president of China, Su Zhongwei, wanted to film it. Of course, he had to make use of the resources of his parent company. After all, the story was set in the US. However, they had also hesitated for a long time. They had been observing the popularity of Prison Break and paying attention to the direction of the plot of Prison Break. They had even used their sock puppets to conduct public opinion polls in the book review section. However, there were too many uncertainties in a serialized novel. If it was written well in the early stages, who knew if it would fail in the later stages? Therefore, they had been observing and had delayed until now. It was only now that the online serialization of Prison Break was nearing its end that Global Pictures began to approach it. Unfortunately, they had found the wrong person. Unlike other authors, Yang Yi's film and television rights were in their hands. I've already given your contact information to the people in Global Pictures. Next, I'll leave it to you to continue the discussion. Huda explained everything to Yang Yi, then smiled and said, "To be honest, our editorial department was cheering for a long time last night. It's a rare opportunity to be noticed by Global Pictures. We also hope that Prison Break can be filmed as soon as possible. It's a very exciting story, isn't it?" Yang Yi was not as optimistic as Huda. He did not want to sell the film and television rights of his work so easily. Since Global Pictures wanted it, Yang Yi wanted to observe their attitude towards the work. If they just wanted to make a quick buck by filming it, Yang Yi did not care if they were from Global Pictures or Global Pictures. It would not work for him. If they wanted to film it, they had to show the attitude and investment of filming a blockbuster. However, for Sahara Publishing House, this was a good opportunity. After Huda, Changzi and the others left, Yang Yi asked Lu Benji, "Is the negotiation team I asked you to set up ready?" Yang Yi now had a big business. He did not need to negotiate with others alone. One of the important reasons he took over Sahara Publishing House was to let them handle the copyright of his works for him. "It's ready. I hired a headhunting company to poach 6 experienced lawyers and managers from all over the country to set up this negotiation team," Lu Benji said quickly. "In the future, we still need to look for people who are familiar with transnational cases and the rules of the Western entertainment industry. We need to broaden our horizons and go global." Yang Yi said, "But this is a good opportunity. Let them try. I'm not very free. Basically, I need to ask them to negotiate with Global Pictures for me." Then Yang Yi listed some of his standards for Lu Benji to evaluate the negotiation team. Before Yang Yi left, he asked about his fans with interest. "By the way, I told you last time that I was going to hold a signing event. What's the feedback from the fans?" Lu Benji also perked up. He sat up straight and said, "After we conveyed your idea to the fans, we received a lot of feedback. But because you did not give a definite time, they were a little worried that you would stand them up." Lu Benji also looked at Yang Yi closely. His eyes seemed to convey the worries of the fans. Yang Yi was happy. He said, "Who said that I didn't set a time? I'm just very busy these 2 months. I can't free myself. How about this? You can arrange for 6 signings in the first 2 weeks of May. What do you think? You can confirm the time? That's great." Lu Benji pushed up his old-fashioned glasses and said with some surprise. Yang Yi smiled and said to Lu Benji, "Because our time is limited, we can only hold 6 signing events for now. But it's okay. If there's a chance in the future, we will continue to hold signing events in other cities." In order to make up for them, Yang Yi pointed at Lu Benji and said, "You can ask for everyone's suggestions on the website. See how they are looking forward to this signing event. Then, you can collect a few of the more popular suggestions for me. I will choose 3 and try to satisfy them as much as possible." Lu Benji felt that the Yang Yi in front of him was like a completely different person from last year. In the past, Yang Yi refused to hold signing events. But now he took the initiative to propose more tricks. Could it be because he had become a public figure now and was breaking a broken jar? There was indeed such a reason, but Lu Benji didn't know that the reason why Yang Yi became so friendly was because Murphy was pregnant. His mood these few days was like a bright spring, and it had been very good. Chapter 472. As the weather gradually warmed up, Springfield Kindergarten began to add some outdoor classes for the children, such as physical education. Running and playing under the bright and beautiful sun were very popular among the children. This week, Springfield Kindergarten welcomed a new toy. A children's play cushion that was laid out in the open space outside the kindergarten. Similar to some children's play areas, this was an inflatable cushion with guardrails that looked like a castle. There weren't many fun things inside. After counting, the only interesting thing was an air slide for children to climb up and down. The other things were all cartoon figures that could only be punched and kicked. There was no other meaning. However, such a simple children's play cushion strongly attracted all the children in the 3 classes. Many children were reluctant to come down after playing on it. Every time the physical education class ended, they would cry and shout, unwilling to go back to the classroom. For the teachers, this was a happy annoyance. No matter how much others cried, she and the others were very happy now, because it was the turn of the children in the middle class to have their physical education class. She, guess where I am? Cece was walking unsteadily on the air cushion when she heard young Luachi's voice coming from an unknown place. She looked in the direction of the voice and immediately found something fishy. The little girl giggled and ran over. However, the air cushion was hard to control. It was soft, and when she took 2 quick steps, the back of her feet couldn't keep up with the front of her feet. She rolled and fell on the air cushion. She fell quite miserably. She flipped over and sprawled out on her back. The lace gauze and the exquisitely embroidered beige princess dress spread out and bloomed like flowers. However, the air cushion was soft and didn't hurt. Instead, it was where the fun came from. "Aya!" Cece cried out. Then, she nimbly flipped over and got up again. She didn't even care about patting her wrinkled dress. She giggled and ran toward the big cactus air cushion pillar. "Chichi, I see you." Cece walked over to the air cushion pillar, then stuck her little head out and peeked through the gap behind her as she called out, "Aha! Shishi, you found out so quickly." Young Luachi crawled out of the gap between the cactus and the guardrail. She held Shishi's hand and giggled. However, it wasn't over yet. A chubby figure appeared from behind. Lon Xian shouted, "Shishi, you didn't notice me. I'm here too. Shishi, Chichi, come here and play." Chun Shiryun shouted loudly, interrupting their conversation. The 3 girls turned around and saw Chun Shiryun kneeling at the top of the slide, waving at them. On the slide, Nan Zhaoyu was the first to roll down. That's right, it was a roll. He didn't have a good grasp of his balance, so he fell sideways and rolled down like a log. But after he rolled down, he sat on the ground in a daze and laughed foolishly. It seemed to be very fun. "Chun Shiryun, wait for me." Cece's interest was piqued. The little girl waved her hands and shouted while running over to the other side with great difficulty. "I'm coming too." Lon Xian shouted loudly. She and Yang Luachi chased after her. But it was obvious that they couldn't run fast on this air cushion. Before she reached halfway, she saw Chun Shiryun sliding down the slide. "Chun Shiryun, you didn't wait for me." She pouted and shouted unhappily. Chun Shiryun waved her hand indifferently and shouted, "It's okay. We'll climb up together." She thought for a moment, and became interested again. She said happily, "Okay then, we'll climb up together. Then we'll slide down together, okay?" This suggestion was unanimously agreed by the little friends. At this time, Nan Zhaoyu, who had fainted for a while, shook his head and climbed up from the air cushion. "I want to stand between Shishi and Chichi." Nan Zhaoyu was a step slower. He looked at the little friends who had already held hands, scratched his head and said with some embarrassment, "They really knew how to pick." But young Luachi was not very happy. She held Shishi's hand tightly and said, "I want to hold hands with Shishi." Lon Xian was kinder. She let go of Shishi's hand and said, "Zhaoyu, come here. I'll hold hands with you." At this time Miss Mu came over. She walked around the railing and finally found Shishi. She said with a smile, "Shishi, your father is here." "My papa is here?" The little girl was surprised at first, but then she hesitated. She looked at the air cushion slide reluctantly. Should she get down from the air cushion? But she hadn't played enough yet. "Miss Mu, are we out of school?" Lon Xian asked in confusion. It was still in the morning. They hadn't eaten lunch yet. Why did Shishi's father come? Miss Mu smiled and said, No, Shishi's father came to pick up Shishi because they have something to do. Although Shishi still wanted to play, her father was waiting for her. The little girl could only reluctantly give up and follow Miss Mu to find her father. However, after seeing her father, Shishi's mood disappeared. Shishi, we have to go back early today because Grandma's plane will arrive at noon. We have to pick her up together, Yang Yi said with a smile, holding Shishi with his left hand and carrying her small school bag with his right hand. Really? The little girl hugged her father's neck and said in surprise. Along the way, the little girl was very excited. She didn't look depressed at all. She said to her father, I like Grandma very much because she can make beautiful clothes. Beautiful clothes? Isn't your grandma a singer? Yang Yi raised his eyebrows and asked. Shishi tilted her head. She didn't understand her father's logic. She said in confusion, Grandma can sing well, but I like her clothes the most. Oh, Dad understands. You're saying that Grandma knows how to sing, tailor, and make clothes, right? At noon, Yang Yi drove the 7-seater nanny car borrowed from Tianmei. He took Murphy, Missouri Shawan and Mohenian, and Shishi to the airport of Jiang City to pick up Zhou Mingyu, who had transferred from Harbor City. When he saw his mother-in-law, Yang Yi was a little surprised. He didn't expect Zhou Mingyu to take such good care of herself. She was almost 60 years old, but she still looked like a woman in her 50s. Her face was rosy and her wrinkles were light. Only her hair was a little gray, but she didn't intend to dye it black. Of course, appearance was secondary. What surprised Yang Yi was her taste in dressing. Zhou Mingyu was different from Mohenian. The latter was obsessed with wearing denim. Although the fabric was trendy, there were only a few styles. Zhou Mingyu was different. She didn't wear a cheongsam for the sake of fashion like other nannies. She was wearing a loose knitted dress. It was more like a skirt than a dress. The style was very retro. The half-length sleeves exposed half of her forearm. It looked like an ancient robe or a skirt. The fabric was precision knitted, and the color was dark green. It looked very elegant. The exquisite part of the dress was the embroidery technique on the hem of the dress, which was where the legs were. A colorful cluster of flowers and 2 butterflies were vividly left on the hem. This pattern was like the finishing touch, which completely brought the retro monochrome dress to life. Looking at his mother-in-law wearing high-heeled leather boots, walking over in a dignified manner, Yang Yi felt like he was watching a model walk in a fashion show. He couldn't believe his eyes. Not only Yang Yi, but the surrounding people who came to pick her up also looked at her. Of course, it wasn't because of amazement, but because of admiration and admiration. Zhou Mingyu, with her white hair and wrinkles, couldn't look like a little girl who could make others fall head over heels for her. But this elegance of hers was something that many people envied but couldn't get. All of a sudden, Yang Yi understood why old Master Mohenian could dress so fashionably in denim. It turned out that the real hero was here. Chapter 473. Although they hadn't seen each other for a year, Shishi still recognized her grandmother at a glance. She retracted her hand from her mother's and happily threw herself at her grandmother. Zhou Mingyu bent down and hugged Shishi with both hands. Grandma, I missed you so much. The little girl plunged her head into her grandmother's skirt and tried her best to raise her head. Her soft and sweet voice sounded, accompanied by her cute smile. Grandma missed you too. After not seeing you for so long, my little baby can actually speak such fluent Chinese. Zhou Mingyu hugged the little girl with a smile on her face. Crow's feet appeared at the corner of her eyes without any scruples. Zhou Mingyu's Mandarin was very interesting. Yang Yi could tell that it was a light Hong Kong accent with a light Taiwanese accent. Clearly, she was also influenced by Mohenian. She didn't know how to reply. She felt that she was praised by her grandmother, and her face was filled with joy. Mom. Murphy went up and wanted to help Zhou Mingyu with her luggage. Hello, Auntie, come with me. Don't carry anything heavy. Yang Yi greeted as he rushed to do the work. Murphy could only let him do it, but she still patted Yang Yi's shoulder and said, Why are you calling me Auntie? Call me Mom. Yang Yi was just worried that calling her Mom would be a little abrupt. Now that Murphy said it, he went with the flow and changed the way he addressed her. Good, it's all good. Zhou Mingyu smiled and nodded at Yang Yi. The way she looked at Yang Yi was very different from the way Mo Henian looked at him. In the beginning, Zhou Mingyu still had a lot of complaints about Yang Yi. However, after learning about Yang Yi's deeds from Mo Shaowan, and finding out the real reason why Yang Yi didn't take care of the pregnant Murphy, Zhou Mingyu completely changed her view of Yang Yi. Yang Yi still had some reservations as a father-in-law, but Zhou Mingyu wasn't stingy with the admiration she had for Yang Yi in her eyes. The reason was simple. Her daughter was a single mother, and it was difficult for her to find a suitable man who loved her and could accept her child. As a mother, Zhou Mingyu hoped that Murphy could live a happy life even in her dreams. Now Murphy was finally married, and the man was Shishi's biological father. Moreover, this man was really good to Murphy. According to Mo Shaowan, Yang Yi had never been a womanizer. With such conditions, what else could she be picky about? I told my papa that grandma is super good at making clothes. At this moment, Shishi moved closer to Zhou Mingyu's ear, and said as if she was asking for credit. Yang Yi was leading the way in front, but his sharp ears heard it. He turned back and said, "Yes." After Shishi said it, I also told Murphy that instead of choosing a wedding dress now, we might as well let Mom design one for us. Zhou Mingyu laughed. She kissed Shishi's little face and said, "You guys have given me a big problem." However, Zhou Mingyu's words didn't have any intention of rejecting. It seemed that she was also interested. "Mom, let me tell you. Yang Yi knows an old tailor. He has all kinds of tools and fabrics." Murphy was afraid that Zhou Mingyu would be too tired to carry Shishi, so she reached out and carried her over with a smile. The photos of Yang Yi and his family at the airport were exposed by the media. Zhou Mingyu, who was dressed very fashionably in the photos, caused people to speculate. Who is she? Of course, Zhou Mingyu's identity wasn't a secret. It was basically exposed the next day. Murphy's mother, a celebrity in Harbor City in the 70s. People suddenly realized that she used to be a celebrity. No wonder she was dressed so fashionably and her age couldn't be recognized with makeup. However, the media liked to dig deeper. They found some reports about Zhou Mingyu back then and exposed the fact that Zhou Mingyu was only a B-list celebrity. There has always been a rumor that Murphy relied on her mother to get to where she is today. But now, it seems that a B-list celebrity 30 years ago can't support the child of a popular singer. It can only be said that the mother has an innate credit for nurturing the child. However, Murphy can achieve what she has today because of her own efforts. Although they were praising Murphy, such a comparison was more or less pretentious. It felt like they were nitpicking. Of course, Zhou Mingyu couldn't read simplified Chinese, so she wouldn't pay attention to these news. She borrowed Yang Yi's study for the past few days, and was really engrossed in designing wedding dresses for Yang Yi and Murphy. She planned to only do design, because compared with the old tailor, she was still inferior. However, after Murphy's affairs were settled, they would set off for Yang Yi's hometown. No matter how the wedding was held, the parents of both sides had to meet, and then discuss the wedding. The wedding needed to be prepared. They couldn't just go back and hold the wedding directly. That would be too hasty and wrong to Murphy. It happened to be the weekend. Yang Yi and the others made arrangements and decided to set off in the afternoon. In the morning, Yang Yi was loading the car in the backyard downstairs. Their luggage had been put into their respective boxes. What he needed to do was to neatly arrange them in the trunk of Tyrant's car. In addition to the gifts he brought back, he needed to cover the car with a waterproof canvas after loading it up. There was a lot of rain in spring now. He didn't know if it would rain on the road. Shishi was holding her giraffe and watching from the side. She asked, "Papa, are we going back to Grandpa's house?" "Yes." As Yang Yi was busy, he turned his head and grinned at his daughter. "Do you miss Grandpa?" "I miss Grandpa and Grandma." But Papa, are we going to pick up the puppy?" Shishi asked expectantly. Yang Yi was a little surprised. He stopped what he was doing and looked at Shishi. "You still remember the puppy?" After the spring festival, when they had just returned from home, Shishi had still talked about it for a few days. However, she had never mentioned the puppy again. Yang Yi hadn't expected that the little girl would still remember the puppy. I remember, Shishi said matter-of-factly. A puppy that was more than 1.5 months old. Yang Yi pondered for a while. He said to Shishi, how about this? After we return to Grandpa's house, we'll go to Uncle Dabo's house to take a look. If the puppy is still too young, we'll bring it back. If it's still too young, we'll wait for a while. Shishi nodded and said, okay. At this time, Yang Huan came over. She wasn't wearing a uniform, only a set of sportswear. She raised her head and said to Yang Yi, brother, where are little Gray and the rest? They're upstairs. Your sister-in-law has already packed up. You can go and get them. Yang Yi nodded at her. Sigh, why is my sister so pitiful? You can go home and play during the holidays, but I still have to stay here and take care of the cats for you. Yang Huan sighed deliberately. This time, Yang Yi didn't bring her back to their hometown because there was nothing for her to do for the time being. Moreover, Yang Huan was only a month or two away from the art exam. During this time, she had been busy with tutoring classes. How could she have time to go home? This was different from the last time they went to the concert in Yangcheng. They would be back in Yangcheng for a day or two. This time, Yang Yi and the others would return to their hometown at an uncertain time. If the wedding date was taken into account, they might have to stay in their hometown for a while. That's enough. Stop arguing with me. Hurry up and take the cat back to study. Yang Yi was indifferent to his sister's resentment. Shishi was still the most considerate. She walked up to Yang Huan, raised her little face and said, Auntie, don't be sad, okay? When I come back with Papa, I'll show you my puppy. Wow, you have a puppy. This auntie's memory was obviously not as good as Shishi's. Chapter 474. Before returning home, Yang Yi was actually a little worried because Mo Henian and his grandfather were both hot-tempered. He was afraid that the two of them would quarrel. But soon, Yang Yi realized that his worries were unnecessary. Perhaps it was because they knew that Murphy was pregnant. Or perhaps it was because the relationship between Murphy and Yang Yi had been confirmed with a red certificate. But Yang Yi and Dong Yu were much more welcoming than before. Dong Yu was full of smiles, and so was Yang Chonggui. Especially when Shishi jumped into her grandfather's arms. The wrinkles on the old man's face bloomed like a chrysanthemum flower. The Yang family's main hall was built according to the style of the ancient family's halls. There were 2 armchairs in the middle, and Yang Chonggui and Mo Henian sat down. As the host, Yang Chonggui did not keep quiet. He took the initiative to chat with his in-laws. I heard from Taizi that you guys were Taiwanese in the past and migrated overseas later on. I'm Taiwanese and Murphy's mother is from Hong Kong. We migrated over because I bought a farm in America. But Murphy wanted to develop her career in China, so she did not transfer her citizenship over. Mo Henian explained. Farm? Is it also a village? Dong Yuer asked. She did not know much about the outside world. It's a farm, not a village. They have a huge plot of land, and they hire people to farm there. Before Yang Yi could say anything, Yang Chonggui explained. It's just like the landlords in the past, but they are not as black-hearted. Mo Henian smiled. That's right. But our farm's main business is animal husbandry. We raise beef for people to eat. As they chatted, they still talked about Taiwanese, which was a common topic. After knowing that his in-laws' hometown was in Baobei, Yang Chonggui said, Baobei Mengjia, I lived in Taiwanese for a period of time 50 years ago. This is the place where I stayed in Baobei. Mengjia? Brother Yang, it's really messy there. Mo Henian said with interest. At that time, our home was in Ximenting, and Mengjia did not dare to go there. Haha, it's only interesting if it's chaotic enough. I know that Ximenting is a place where rich people live. Brother Mo, it seems that you were also a young master in the past. Yang Chonggui said disapprovingly. Zhou Mingyu, who was sitting at the side, was rather surprised. She asked, My in-law has been to Taiwan before? He went to many places when he was young, and traveled everywhere. It was only after he came back to me that he gradually calmed down. Dong Yu said proudly. Traveling around the world, my in-law's knowledge is not simple. But why did you stay in the countryside to be a farmer? Zhou Mingyu was still a little confused. Yang Chonggue stroked his beard and calmly said, "There's nothing wrong with being a farmer. Brother Mo is a young master living in Shimenting, so he should have received a good education. But in the end, didn't he buy a piece of land and become a farmer?" Mo Henian laughed and said, "Brother Yang is right, we're all different paths leading to the same destination. Hey Brother Mo, tell me, what do you think of the beef cows on your farm? It's useless to talk about it. Brother Yang, I think you should find time to visit us while you're still in good health." These two old men were really kindred spirits. After meeting, not only did they not quarrel as Yang Yi had worried, but they also chatted happily, as if they were old friends who had not seen each other for many years. Seeing this scene, Yang Yi was relieved. He found an opportunity to walk out of the hall, and wanted to go upstairs to help Murphy pack her luggage. However, as soon as he came out, he was caught by Shishi. "Papa, I want to see the dogs." The little girl just ignored her image of a little lady and chased the chickens and ducks in the yard everywhere. Now she came to pester her father. Yang Yi looked at Shishi's big expectant eyes. How could he bear to refuse? "Okay, Papa will take you to see Uncle Dabo." Yang Yi took Shishi's little hand and went out of the door. Let's talk about the two sides, each with its own branch. Let's talk about his family first. Murphy was upstairs. She took out Shishi's clothes from the suitcase, folded them one by one, and tidied them up in the wardrobe. "Fei, Mom will help you." No one knew when Zhou Mingyu came up. She glanced at Mo Fei, who was busy, and walked in and said, "Mom, I'm not in a hurry. Let me help you tidy up your room." Murphy hurriedly waved her hand. She dragged Mo Henian and Zhou Mingyu's suitcase, and took the lead to walk out without saying anything. Mo Henian and Zhou Mingyu were arranged to live next door to Murphy. The room next door was not as shabby as before, with only one bed and 4 bare walls. In addition to Yang Yi's return during the Spring Festival, he added some furniture and electrical appliances. During this period of time, Yang Chonggue also asked the carpenter to build a cabinet and replaced Yang Yi's old bed with a new big bed. Zhou Mingyu gently pushed Murphy's hand while she was tidying up the clothes with Murphy. She lowered her voice and asked, "Fei, during the Spring Festival, when you came over for the first time, did your parents-in-law make things difficult for you?" Murphy shook her head and smiled. "Why would they? Mom, what are you talking about? Why would they make things difficult for me?" Zhou Mingyu pursed her lips and said, "I used to think that Yang Yi was a country bumpkin. But look at the way they do things. They are exactly the same as the old family. Your mother-in-law is fine, but your father-in-law is not simple. How can he be a farmer? He even went abroad and traveled around." At that time, Bao Dao had not returned, so Zhou Mingyu's words were not wrong. "That can't be? I feel that they are quite normal and treat me well." Murphy was puzzled. She was not as observant as Zhou Mingyu. "Mom actually wants you to marry into an ordinary family. If you marry into a big family, you will be bullied and looked down upon by others. How terrible would that be?" Zhou Mingyu had seen it before. Some of her sisters used to be glamorous female celebrities. After they married into rich families, they either got divorced or quarreled with each other every day. Murphy knew that her mother was worried about her. She smiled and said, "Mom, don't worry. They are all very good to me. Moreover, Yang Yi's family is not a big family. There are only a few of them. I'm relieved that they treat you well." Zhou Mingyu nodded. Murphy smiled and said, "Mom, don't worry. Moreover, with Yang Yi around, how could he let me suffer? Moreover, didn't Yang Yi not get married to me?" When his parents heard about it, they flew into a rage. Yang Yi was even called to the ancestral hall by his father as punishment. "I feel that they treat me better than Yang Yi." Murphy smiled sweetly. "Of course they treat you well. You gave birth to a child for the Yang family, and now you are pregnant with another one." Zhou Mingyu pouted. In the end, as a mother, she was biased towards her child. Zhou Mingyu was usually a very gentle person, but now, for Mo Fei's sake, she had become a strange old woman. Chapter 475. Yang Yi carried Shishi and walked on a small path in the village. During this period of time, the roads in the village were being repaired. The roads in front of every house were going to be paved with cement. The road in front of Yang Yi's house was a cement road, because their house, which was the first to have it done, had already been repaired. However, when passing through the area where the road was being repaired, the smoke and dust were still a little heavy. Yang Yi carried Shishi, covered her mouth and eyes with his clothes, and quickly passed through. "Hey brother Tizi, why did you come back?" Just then, a young man carrying a hoe walked over. Yang Yi knew him. It was Mu Chang'an. When he saw Yang Yi, he asked in surprise. "I came back to discuss something with my family," Yang Yi said with a smile. After chatting for a while, Mu Chang'an knew that Yang Yi was going to find Li Shipo. He immediately said, "I saw Li Shipo just now. He's not at home. He's plucking pigweed in the back mountain. It's okay, I'll call him back now." After saying that, Mu Chang'an excitedly held his hoe and ran away. Like a gust of wind, he disappeared in front of Yang Yi's eyes. Yang Yi didn't even have time to ask him to put down the hoe first. He's really a young man. He's so energetic. Yang Yi shook his head. She couldn't hold it anymore. She poked her little head out of her father's arms and looked outside curiously. She blinked her big eyes and asked, "Papa, where's the puppy?" Yang Yi took Shishi to Li Shipo's house. Standing at the door, they heard a dog barking inside. Judging from the sound, it should be Big Yellow's. Yang Yi smiled and pointed inside. He said, "Did you hear that? The puppy is in there with its mother." Shishi got down from her father's arms. She was a little happy and a little scared. She walked over and back and took her father's hand. "Don't worry, De Huang should be quite obedient." Yang Yi patted the little girl's head. Li Shipo soon returned, carrying a bamboo basket like a backpack. His appearance reminded Yang Yi of a well-known nursery rhyme from his previous life, although it was filled with pigweed and not mushrooms. "Brother Taizi, you're finally here." Li Shipo happily opened the door and said, "The other puppies in the house have been given away to others. There's only one left." Li Shipo's Mandarin had a slight local accent. Shishi, who was listening at the side, was stunned. After the door opened, Yang Yi walked in first, but after taking 2 steps, he turned his head and saw that his daughter had not come in. "Don't be afraid. Daddy is here. It won't bite." Yang Yi thought that Shishi was frightened by Big Yellow's fierce barking, so he turned around to pull her back. At the same time, he told Li Shipo, "Tie up the big dog." Li Shipo smiled and said, "It's okay. Big Yellow won't bite. It's barking because it's not familiar with you." As he said that, he shouted at Big Yellow, "Big Yellow, stop fooling around. This is a guest. Did you forget that it was here when you were giving birth last time?" Big Yellow seemed to be very understanding. It immediately stopped barking and looked up at its master's expression. It wagged its tail and came over. On the other side, Yang Yi was comforting Shishi. "Big Yellow isn't fierce. It's welcoming you. Daddy is here. What are you afraid of?" He still thought that the reason Shishi did not move was that she was afraid of Big Yellow. He smiled and carried the little girl. But he gave the puppies to others. Shishi lowered her head sadly and leaned on her father's chest. As she spoke, the rims of her eyes turned red. "What? He gave the puppies to others?" Yang Yi was stunned. "What? I mean, the other puppies have been taken away by others. The only one left is the one for you." Li Shipo heard it and complained. "No, Uncle Debo said that he didn't give the puppies to others." Yang Yi understood that there seemed to be some misunderstanding during this period of time. He smiled and walked inside with the little girl while gently explaining to her. Li Shipo hurriedly ran into the tool room inside. At this time, Big Yellow wagged his tail and came over. He seemed to have realized his mistake and used his nose to sniff Yang Yi's feet, pants, and Cece's small shoes. "Really?" Shishi asked sadly at first. Then she was startled by the movement from the tip of her foot. She looked down and saw the big bitch so close to her. She hurriedly withdrew her little feet. "Papa! Papa!" She panicked when she heard the sound. Yang Yi comforted the little girl and said, "Don't be afraid. Big Yellow is trying to get close to you. It wants to smell your scent and remember you. Then it won't bark at you in the future." Shishi, look. At this time, Li Shipo came out with a little puppy in his arms. It was round like a meatball, but it looked much bigger than when it was just born. The puppy you want has a white hair on its forehead. I remember it clearly, so I've been keeping it for you. Big Yellow also left Yang Yi and began to circle around Li Shupo, wagging its tail. She finally felt relieved. She smiled through her tears and clapped her little hands excitedly. That's it. It's super cute. Yang Yi rubbed his daughter's little head and said to Li Shupo with a smile. She's been talking about this puppy. Look at how excited she is. Li Shupo put down the little puppy. She also got down from her father's arms and gathered her courage to go over. Although it was a mongrel, the little puppy still looked very cute. It was a little chubby and had a strong head. It had a pair of big innocent eyes, but the drooping corners of its eyes gave it a kind of heart-wrenching melancholy. Yang Yi stood beside Xi and did not leave her side. He was sure that Xi and Big Yellow would appear in his field of vision. Although Big Yellow lazily lay down on the side, and did not seem to care about Xi playing with its child, Yang Yi was still worried that Big Yellow would hurt people because of its concern for its child. Is this puppy a male or a female? Yang Yi chatted with Li Shupo while taking care of Xi. Li Shupo could not stay idle. He went to the side, spread out the pigweed that he pulled back, and began to chop it with a kitchen knife. Hearing Yang Yi's question, he raised his head and smiled. It's a female. Big Yellow only has one female puppy in this litter. I picked it for you. At this moment, Xi, who had been looking at the little puppy for a while, turned around and pulled her father's hand. She said to her father with a smile, Papa, look, the puppy's eyes are open. Yes, the last time you saw it, it was just born and did not open its eyes. Yang Yi also squatted down and gently touched the little puppy's head. He said softly, Come Xi, play with it and get familiar with it. Perhaps it was a natural attraction, but the little puppy was a little afraid of Yang Yi's big hand, but it took the initiative to squeeze between the squatting Xi's legs. When Xi touched its little head, the little puppy lowered its head and licked the little girl's palm. The little puppy's pink tongue licked the palm of her hand, which felt very wonderful. Xi first called out nervously, but she was reluctant to avoid it. She called out, ah ah ah, and turned her head to look at her father. Papa, Papa, look, it's eating me. Xi giggled. It was impossible to tell whether she was really afraid or pretending to be afraid. It's okay. It likes you and wants to play with you, Yang Yi said. Li Shupo looked up and said, Brother Tizi, I think Xi also likes it. Don't wait for 3 months, just take it back. So early? Yang Yi asked in surprise. Such a small puppy is still drinking Big Yolk's milk, right? Can it be raised if we take it back? Li Shupo smiled and said, Brother Tizi, you said that it can't be raised. Are you talking about those foreign dogs? I've seen them in the county town, they are too delicate. The native dogs in our hometown are smarter than them and easier to raise. Didn't you see that this puppy is the only one left in the litter? The others have been taken away by others. Yang Yi had heard that native dogs were easier to raise, but he had no experience. He didn't understand, so he asked, Then what should we feed it? It can eat anything. It's more than a month old, almost 2 months old. It has stopped drinking dog milk long ago. I usually break some cooked egg yolks and feed it with white porridge, Li Shupo said. But you can't feed it milk, it will have diarrhea. I know. Yang Yi nodded. He squatted down beside Xi and looked at the little puppy, who turned over on the ground and raised its little feet to play with Xi. He also liked it a little. Compared with cats, Yang Yi thought that dogs were more fun. Xi, Uncle De Pa said that you can take the puppy home. Yang Yi told Xi the news. Really? The little girl was pulling the little puppy's feet. Hearing this, she turned her head and looked at her father with surprise. Chapter 476. In the evening, Yang Qing's fiancé, or in local terms his fiancée, Zheng Shuyi, also came over. She and Murphy were preparing dinner in the kitchen. Zhou Mingyu didn't know how to cook. Usually at home, it was either the nanny or Emohenian who cooked 1 or 2 side dishes, so she couldn't help much. Yang Chonggue waved his hand, and said that their generation had children and grandchildren, so they should enjoy life. Therefore, this meal would be prepared by the younger generation, including Dong Yue, and no one was allowed to help. Fortunately, Zheng Shuyi's cooking skills were good. She would cook, and Murphy would help as much as she could. Sister-in-law, after your relationship is exposed, will it be very troublesome? Zheng Shuyi chatted with her. Zheng Shuyi was younger, in her 20s. After she found out about Murphy's identity, she began to pay attention to the news. Their Zheng village was well off, and every family had a TV, so Zheng Shuyi also saw the news of Murphy and Yang Yi's relationship being exposed on TV. It will be a lot of trouble. Now there are often paparazzi near our house, reporters who secretly take photos. Yang Yi is going to take us to another place to live, Murphy said to her. But it's good that our relationship is exposed. In the past, we were always afraid of people finding out, so we didn't dare to take Shishi out. Now it's okay. In the future, we can go to Shishi's parent-teacher meetings. At this point, Murphy's face showed a relaxed smile. As they were cooking and chatting, Shishi, who went to see the puppy with her father, came back. The little girl ran to the kitchen with her feet and ran in excitedly, pulling on her mother's clothes. Mom. The little girl couldn't wait. She jumped and said, Mom, I want to show you something. What is it? You brought the puppy back? Mo Fei suddenly had an idea and asked with a smile. Shishi saw that her mother had guessed it, but she wasn't depressed. She was still beaming with joy, waving her little hands and jumping on the ground. Yes, the puppy is back. Papa is there, super cute. I'll take you there. The little girl was extremely anxious to show off to her mother. But Mom still has to prepare dinner with Auntie. Mom can't leave, Murphy said awkwardly. Zheng Shuyi smiled and said, Sister-in-law, go ahead. It's fine. I can handle it here. Murphy looked at Shishi, who was holding her hand. She nodded and said, I'll come back to help you. The little puppy was carried back in a small bamboo basket. It was lying on a soft cushion, turning its head to look at this new world. Of course, without its mother by its side, the little guy was a little nervous, but it didn't have the intention to get rid of it and go back to its mother. Mo Hinian clasped his hands behind his back and stood behind Yang Yi. He looked at the dog and said seriously, This dog is not bad. It's a pure breed. Look at its eyes. It will definitely be very smart when it grows up. Hey, it's just a country dog. What's there to care about? Yang Chonggui laughed. Hey, don't say that. Old Yang, the price of this dog's breed is very different from that of a mixed breed. Mo Hinian chatted with him. The two old men were commenting on a dog with great interest. It was unknown how the little puppy would feel if it knew. Murphy was pulled over by Shishi. She saw the little puppy's dignified appearance and liked it very much. However, Murphy frowned and said, Hey, why is its fur so dirty? Before it's cleaned, we can't let Shishi touch it. In the countryside, the country dogs were all left to their own devices. Even the little puppy would roll on the ground by itself. This was considered good. Li Shupo's house didn't raise chickens, so the yard was relatively clean. However, the little puppy was covered in dust. Murphy was still worried that there would be fleas, afraid that they would run to Shishi. Thinking that her mother was talking about her, Shishi quickly waved her hand and explained to her mother, Mom, I've cleaned it. Smell it. It still smells good. She also extended her small wrist to her mother. Yang Yi, who paid the most attention to these things, of course, considered Shishi's hygiene. After letting Shishi play with the little puppy, he didn't directly take her and the little puppy home. Instead, he and Shishi went to the well in Li Shupo's house to draw clean well water. They used the long-acting bacteriostasis soap to wash their hands and wrists clean before coming back. However, that wasn't what Murphy was referring to. It's okay. I've thought of it. I'll take it upstairs for a bath later. There's a shower and a hairdryer upstairs. After I wash it clean, I can let it play with Shishi. Yang Yi said with a smile. I want to give the puppy a bath too, Shishi said eagerly. Murphy was relieved. She smiled and said to Shishi, Such a cute puppy. Do you have a name for it? Yang Yi shook his head. He wanted to say no for Shishi, but who knew that Shishi nodded seriously and said, I have a name for the puppy. Really? You've already named it? Yang Yi asked in surprise. So fast. What are you going to name it? I think it's chubby like a big white bun. Shishi leaned on her mother's leg and giggled. She said embarrassedly, let's call it Bowsy. Bowsy? Yang Yi looked at the puppy that didn't look like a Bowsy at all. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry and shook his head. Okay, it's your puppy. You can call it whatever you want. Mo Fei, on the other hand, said excitedly, I think the name Cece came up with is quite nice. Steamed bun very cute. Hee. The little girl laughed happily. Bathing the puppy was a big project. The main thing was that Shishi also had to participate. Yang Yi had to put a waterproof windbreaker on her. Then he carried the small bamboo basket and took Shishi to the bathroom upstairs. Help Daddy carry this. Yang Yi turned on the water heater and adjusted the water temperature to a moderate temperature. Then he handed the nozzle to Shishi. Don't waste water. Point the nozzle at this bucket. Actually, it was fine if he didn't give it to Shishi, but since the little girl wanted to participate, Yang Yi arranged a small task for her. Shishi happily took it. However, she didn't listen to him obediently. Hearing the sound of the water spraying, her heart itched. Seeing that her father had turned around to carry the puppy, she couldn't help but reach out her left hand and touch the water from the nozzle. Feeling the thin lines of water washing over her palm, the little girl was amused. Although she didn't laugh out loud, her big eyes turned into crescents. It was very fun. Shishi, you spilled water on Daddy. Yang Yi turned around with the puppy in his arms and looked at Shishi. Some water splashed on his face by Shishi. Ouch! The little girl hurriedly retracted her little hand, as if she had been caught doing something bad. She was a little embarrassed and twisted her body to her father and smiled. Look, you spilled water on Daddy's face. Yang Yi deliberately tilted his face and pouted unhappily. I'll wipe it for Daddy. The little girl cleverly reached out her left hand and wiped her father's face. The little girl's hand was tender and cold, but it was also wet. She forgot that there was water on her hand. As a result, the more she wiped her father's face, the more wet it became. Okay. Yang Yi, who was enjoying his daughter's considerate service, didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he found that his face was wet. He had to stop Shishi and rubbed his face against the clothes on his arm. Let's give the little bun a bath. Chapter 477. Steamed Bun, the little puppy, was a little afraid of water. Yang Yi picked him up from under his armpit, and he faced Shishi in a shameful position. His big black eyes rolled around, looking at the scary water, and he kicked his two hind legs in a panic. Unfortunately, his short legs couldn't kick anything. It could only act cute and amuse Cece, who was in front of him, into giggling. It was actually the first time Yang Yi bathed a dog, and he felt that this position was not easy to grasp. He looked around and took a wash basin to flush the toilet. During this time, he used his left hand to hold Steamed Bun's abdomen. The little guy was too small, and Yang Yi easily held him firmly with one hand. Even though he tried to escape, how could he escape from this devil's grasp so easily? Oh! Steamed Bun's cries were weak, not at all as loud and powerful as his mother, and he sounded quite pitiful. Papa, Papa, Steamed Bun is barking. He can bark. Shishi said happily to her father, as if she had discovered a new continent. Yang Yi warmed the wash basin with warm water, and then put Steamed Bun inside. As soon as the little guy's 4 feet touched the ground, he wanted to escape. However, the big devil had already held him down. Shishi, give me the shower head. Yang Yi stretched out his hand and said, I also want to give Steamed Bun a bath. The little girl grabbed the shower head, unwilling to give it to her father, and said with a pout, Okay, let's do it together. Yang Yi had to let Shishi stand over. The little girl held the shower head, and Yang Yi grabbed her hand, controlled the amount of water and the angle, and sprayed it on Steamed Bun's back. The water temperature was suitable, and although Steamed Bun trembled for a while, he did not find anything to be afraid of, so he stopped struggling. Unlike cats, dogs were not afraid of water, so they were not afraid of bathing. Steamed Bun wanted to escape before, but he probably never tried it. He also curiously stuck out his small tongue and licked the water that flowed down from his body in the wash basin. After getting Steamed Bun wet, Yang Yi turned off the shower head and let Shishi take it to the side. Then he squeezed some shampoo and rubbed it on steamed bun. The little puppy still wanted to turn around to look, but Yang Yi held him down while gently patting his head to calm him down. It's bubbling. She, who was watching on the side, whispered. That's right. Make some bubbles. That's the only way to wash it clean. Yang Yi said to his daughter while rubbing Bao Bao. Washing its body was relatively easy, but washing its face was more difficult. Yang Yi could only try his best to wash its head. Then he used his hand to hold the nozzle and collect water to rub its face. He also had to be careful to avoid touching its eyes, nose, and ears. Even so, steamed bun was still struggling when he was washing his face. Perhaps the water had touched his nose or eyes, making him feel a little uncomfortable. Cece watched anxiously from the side. She couldn't stand still. As she walked, she squatted down beside her father and whispered to the steamed bun. Steamed bun, don't be afraid. Papa will be fine after bathing. It will be very quick. Papa is bathing him, not the other way around, Yang Yi said with a smile. Although it was a little troublesome, he finally cleaned steamed bun. After Yang Yi washed away the dirty water and bubbles on steamed bun, he quickly took a clean towel, wrapped it around steamed bun, and wiped him. Then it was time to blow-dry his hair. Although he was a native dog, the little puppy's physical resistance was still weak. Yang Yi carefully blow-dried all of his hair, including his small tail. During this process, steamed bun did not struggle, and even squinted his eyes in enjoyment. Shishi, look, he likes it when we blow-dry his hair. Look at his expression, isn't he very proud? Yang Yi smiled and gestured to Shishi. Hee, I also like to blow-dry my hair. My hair is very long, and it can be blown up. Shishi exaggeratedly waved her hand and smiled at her father. When he was almost done, Yang Yi took steamed bun to the side, which was temporarily made with a wash basin, an old quilt, and an old pillow. Shishi immediately came over and played with the little guy. Papa, look, I like to touch steamed bun. It's very comfortable. Shishi touched steamed bun's hair, and said to her father with some joy. She felt that steamed bun after bathing was softer than it was in the afternoon. This kind of little native dog's hair was neither long nor short, but it was really soft. The little girl felt that she could not put it down. Papa will give you a task. You stay upstairs and watch steamed bun. Don't let him run out of this room, okay? Yang Yi said to Shishi. The room was clean. Yang Yi had mopped the floor, but the outside of the room was dirty. Okay. Shishi nodded absent-mindedly. Yang Yi quickly went downstairs. He first went to the kitchen to get the eggs that Murphy and Zheng Shuyi had cooked, and a bowl of cooked and cold porridge. Then he went to the tool room in the back and got a clean and used big bamboo basket, which was usually used to cover chickens. When he went back upstairs, steamed bun had already climbed out of his kennel and was playing with Shishi in the room. Yang Yi saw that steamed bun was still adapting to the new environment. He happily jumped around Shishi's feet and chased after Shishi's shoelaces. The little girl was confused by steamed bun. When she saw her father come up, she dizzily threw herself into her father's arms and giggled. Papa, steamed bun is so fun. He likes to bite my shoes here. Are you hungry? Yang Yi patted the little girl's butt and smiled. He pulled a small stool and sat down. Then he began to peel the eggs. I'm hungry, Papa, but I don't want to eat eggs. Shishi leaned on her father's body. The little girl was still a little dizzy. Who said it was for you? Yang Yi laughed. He broke the peeled egg, took out the yolk, and then crushed it and mixed it with the cooked porridge. Then he motioned to Shishi and said, This is for steamed bun. Yang Yi put down the bowl in front of steamed bun. He didn't know if steamed bun was hungry, but the little dog was very smart. He sniffed the bowl and began to eat. He ate it. Seeing this, Shishi forgot to blame her father for not bringing her food and teasing her. She happily squatted on the side and watched steamed bun eat. Steamed bun ate very happily and was not picky at all. Yang Yi thought of the three little masters at home. In comparison, steamed bun was better. However, the little guy couldn't eat too much. After eating half a bowl, he stopped eating. Yang Yi took steamed bun to his temporary nest, and then covered him with the bamboo basket he had just brought up. The bamboo basket was full of holes, enough for ventilation, And with the strength of the little puppy, he couldn't push it. "Papa, why did you lock steamed bun up?" She asked, puzzled. "I want to play with steamed bun." Yang Yi laughed and said, "Because Papa wants to take you to take a bath. After we gave steamed bun a bath, we are very dirty. We have to wash up before we can go down to eat. Hurry up, your mom and auntie are almost done cooking. We can't let Grandpa and Grandma wait for us for too long." "Okay then." The little girl was very obedient. Of course, maybe because she was really hungry. She reluctantly looked at the little puppy lying on the bamboo basket and barking. "Let's go, we'll play with him after we finish eating," Yang Yi said to Shishi as he took out a change of clothes. In the evening after dinner, Mo Henian and Yang Chonggui looked at each other and said to Yang Yi and Murphy, "This afternoon, old Yang calculated the dates with me. After calculating, April 12th is the most suitable day for the wedding. Moreover, my visa can't stay for too long, so this is the best day. So, we decided to set the wedding date on this day. What do you think?" Mo Henian asked. Yang Chonggui originally planned to directly make the decision for the few elders, but Mo Henian persuaded him, saying that he needed to ask for the opinions of the young people. So fast. Yang Yi and Murphy were a little surprised. It was April 3rd now, and there were only 9 days, 1 week, and 2 days left to prepare. Could they make it in time? Chapter 478. After the wedding date was set, the two families started to get busy. They sent wedding invitations to their friends and relatives, prepared some wedding supplies, and so on. Even Yang Qing's future daughter-in-law came over to help Murphy with her plans. It was considered an early rehearsal. Yang Yi, on the other hand, took some time to go back to Jiangcheng. On one hand, he received the people from Global Pictures and handed them over to the negotiation team of his publishing house. On the other hand, he went back to pick up the Chinese wedding dress designed by Zhou Mingyu and made by the old tailor. On the other hand, he gave the invitations to Guozi, Ding Xiang, and other good friends. Of course, they had to attend their own wedding. Lans Hao Kai would send a car to pick them up. Yang Huan, who was still in class, would also go home with the car. She would be the guide. Speaking of Global Pictures, they sent a manager named Zhu Xingxian. Of course, he also brought his assistant, Zhou Yakin. When the two of them first met Yang Yi, they put on the airs of a big company and wanted to suppress Yang Yi's price. However, Yang Yi didn't waste time with them. After meeting them, he brought them to Sahara Publishing House and sent a team of 6 people to continue the negotiation. 6 people. This was enough to make them feel flattered. How could it be so exaggerated? A small author, at most with the halo of a songwriter, how could he make such a big scene? Zhu Shengxian was dumbfounded. Of course, they didn't hide it. After Yang Yi left, the 6-person team continued to shock them. They told them the fact that Yang Yi had a high net worth. Zhu Shengxian finally felt the pressure of the negotiation. Yang Yi's identity wasn't that simple. A person at the top of the pyramid of capital wasn't someone they could casually bully. The Sahara negotiation team even proposed to them that they could consider investing together in order to obtain a higher share of the profits. This directly placed Yang Yi on an equal footing with Global Pictures. Global Pictures indeed has a strong background and can choose to give up. However, Yang Yi will not care too much about the withdrawal of a Global Pictures. Without Global Pictures, there are still Fox and other big shots eyeing him covetously. Moreover, even if these big companies withdraw, Yang Yi can continue to wait for the best price. With his financial resources, there is no need to worry about not being able to sell. Zhu Xingxian was in a predicament. He realized that his previous threats to the newcomer writers had no effect. The negotiation of this project could only be temporarily shelved. He needed to return to the company to discuss with the higher-ups to confirm a suitable plan. Of course, Yang Yi wouldn't care about this for the time being. He returned to Jiang City for less than a day before he hurried back to his hometown in Anqing. His wife and children were waiting for him there. In Jiang City, Du Yuanlei, who had officially started the project of The Fugitive, started the audition. She invited the producer Mo Xiaowan, as well as the company's veteran, Xiao Ai. The three of them formed a panel of judges to examine the candidates recommended by some agencies. Of course, Mo Xiaowan and Xiao Ai were only there to support Du Yuanlei. They didn't know how to act and didn't study the script carefully. Basically, Du Yuanlei was the one making the judgments. However, after a few days, Du Yuanlei's strictness made Mo Xiaowan and Xiao Ai speechless. 60 actors in 3 days, but none of them were acceptable to her. Even Guozi, who tried to audition for the role of the protagonist, Ludi, was mercilessly rejected by her. Do you think you are suitable for this role? Although Du Yuanlei gave Guozi a chance to audition, after he finished his part, she said mercilessly, "The role of Ludi needs to be tall enough, powerful enough, and fierce enough. Only an actor like this can act out the character's temperament." In comparison, Guozi wasn't tall enough, and he was also fat. He really didn't look like a powerful bank robber. However, Guozi wasn't discouraged. He went back and pondered over the script for another 2 days, then decided to come back for another audition. However, this time he wasn't auditioning for the 2 main characters, because Wang Mai's father was supposed to be a thin and short character, which didn't fit him. "I want to try for the role of Du Jiang. I think I can act well." Guozi was full of confidence as he told Du Yuanlei. Du Jiang was the police officer who stared at Ludi and made mistakes time and time again. In order to act well for this role, Guozi wrote his own biography. Plus, he really did know how to act the role of a police officer well. Guozi's father used to wear a cap, and Guozi had been in contact with government officials since he was young, so he had seen a lot of things. The image of a police officer was something that he could imitate in his memory. The audition script was when Du Jiang and his partner were eating at a roadside stall when they heard a warning from the radio. "Old Du, the bank that they said was robbed at East Queen Street. Could it be the one that we sent Ludi to?" Du Yuanlei acted as his partner and read the lines. Du Jiang, who was played by Guozi, was stunned for a moment. Then his eyes widened. F***ck. Guozi threw the hamburger in his hand onto the table, then slammed the table and stood up. He said angrily, "It must be Ludi. I knew he wouldn't stay put. Let's go. I have to catch him myself." What was worth mentioning was that Guozi did not act out the actual food. There was no hamburger at all. Just now, when he was eating and throwing things, it was all acting in the air. But it had to be said that this guy did put in a lot of effort into acting. His acting was really good. What was even more interesting was Guozi's expression. Not only was he shocked and angry, but he also tried to cover up his anger, but was unable to completely cover up his shame and annoyance. In the script, Du Jiang drove Ludi to the bank, and the robber took a police car to rob the bank. If Du Jiang did not catch him, how could he continue to work in the police force? Guozi's acting was very good. Coupled with his slightly chubby body and agitated actions, it brought a lot of laughs. After the acting, Du Yuanlei was actually very satisfied. She asked Mo Xiaowan and Xiao Ai for their opinions. Mo Xiaowan and Xiao Ai naturally did their best to support their own artists. Of course, it was also because Guozi's acting was really good. But Guozi looks a little young. Won't he look too young to act as Du Jiang? Du Yuanlei was still a little hesitant. "You can put on makeup. I know a way to put on makeup for the elderly. You can find someone to put on makeup for Guozi and make him look older," Mo Xiaowan said. With that, Guozi was temporarily cast as Du Jiang's character. Although it was not the main lead, Guozi played a rather important supporting role in his first movie. He was satisfied. However, the other important roles were still not confirmed. Du Yuanlei and Mo Xiaojuan's connections were still a little shallow. There were almost no actors with outstanding acting skills who came for the audition. The actors recommended by ordinary agencies were not good enough, especially in the eyes of a picky person like Du Yuanlei. Their acting skills were full of mistakes and could not be looked at directly. Seeing that Du Yuanlei was in a difficult situation, Guozi suddenly had an idea and said, "Senior Du, I have a good candidate who can play the role of Wang Li." "Who?" Du Yuanlei looked at Guozi. "Geng Sha, a brother of mine. You might not know him because he was just a minor character in the past. But now he is the main lead of Soldier's Attack. You know Soldier's Attack, right? It's Brother Yang's work. Geng Sha was promoted by the great director Chen Fengchen to play the role of Su Sanduo. Guo said, Brother Yang also thinks that Geng Sha is good. What do you think is more suitable for the role of Wang Li? In what aspect is he more suitable? Du Yuanlei asked. Geng Sha is not tall, and he is a simple person. His acting skills are simple, but he is not bad at all. Most importantly, he is diligent and obedient. You will know when you see it. Guo smiled and said, It just so happens that Soldier's Assault is about to wrap up. I heard from Geng Sha that he doesn't have any scenes recently, and has some time. Why don't you give him a chance to audition? Okay, bring this script to him and ask him to come for the audition the day after tomorrow. Du Yuanlei was desperate. Chapter 479. Yang Yi didn't consider what happened in Jiangqing for the time being. He returned to Wadayaka village and saw Murphy, who was listening to Dong Yue and Zhou Mingyu discuss the details of the wedding in the main hall. He also saw Shi, who was playing with buns with a few other children in the village. Yang Yi didn't disturb them. After greeting them, he returned to the courtyard and asked Yang Qing, Qingzi, where's Dad? He went for a stroll in the fields with your father-in-law and the village chief. Yang Qing put a yoke on the old ox that was pulling the cart, which was the crossbar that was tied to the shaft of the ox cart, and said with a smile. Note 1. After hearing from Yang Yi that Mo Henian and Yang Chonggui often went to the fields these 2 days, Yang Yi, who was just asking casually, became curious. What were these 2 old men up to? Yang Qing used the ox cart to drag the water pump to the fields to water the new seedlings that were planted this year. Yang Yi followed along to see what was going on. At the back of the village, there was a boundless field with green mountains and clear water behind it. The scenery was just right. From afar, Yang Yi saw a group of people standing on the ridge between the green seedlings, pointing at the field. The one leading the group was Mo Henian. The old man was in high spirits, gesturing with his fingers. He was saying something to Yang Chonggui, the village chief, Dong Qi, and the others beside him. It gave off a feeling of pointing at the mountains and rivers, encouraging words, and the marquee of tens of thousands of households in the past. When Yang Yi got closer and heard Mo Henian's voice, he realized that he was introducing the agricultural machinery to Dong Qi and the convenience that agricultural production could bring. The village has a total of more than 600 mu of farmland, right? The land is good, the soil is fertile, and you can harvest anything you plant. However, there are too many people involved in agricultural production every year. After dividing it evenly, the benefits that each person can get are too little. My farm is about the size of a village. The planting area isn't big, only about 30 mu. However, I only hired 5 people. How can I plant so much land? Machines rely on the power of science and technology. Although there aren't many people using them, they can get twice the results with half the effort. What Yang Yi didn't know was that Mo Henian didn't want to be an agricultural expert for the villagers on a whim. After Yang Chonggui learned about America's modern agriculture from Mo Henian, the more he thought about it, the more he felt that it was a good idea for the village's development. Yang Chonggui actively acted as a go-between for Dong Qi, encouraging Mo Henian to impart his advanced farming concepts to the farmers in the village. This led to their field trip in the village and Mo Henian's passionate speech. Mo Henian's suggestion was indeed quite tempting to Dong Qi. However, agricultural machinery was not cheap. Moreover, each family did not have much farmland. Although it's a little hard for everyone to farm now, we still have enough manpower. After using this machinery, wouldn't it be a waste if the remaining people don't work? The manpower freed up from farming can be used for other things, such as working in the city. Mo Henian said. Working in the city. Dong Qi frowned. These kids don't study much. What can they do in the city? Due to Wadayaka village's geographical location and inconvenient transportation, it was more isolated compared to other villages like Zheng Family Village that were close to the county. Most of the young people in the village had only been to the county and had never been to the big cities. Moreover, they had too much work to do at home. However, it wasn't like they didn't have such thoughts. Li Shupo, Mu Chang'an, and Yang Huan's generation yearned for life in the city. For example, Yang Huan studied in the county. She wanted to jump out of this small circle and go to a bigger and more beautiful city. If it wasn't for Yang Yi, she might have become a factory girl. Although Li Shupo, Mu Chang'an, and the rest had not jumped out of the small circle, they often asked about the outside world when they were chatting with Yang Yi. They were eager to know more about the outside world. Unfortunately, they didn't know what they could do. They could only be lost in their busy lives. They had the desire to explore, but they didn't have the goal or ability to do so. When Yang Yi heard their conversation from the side, he couldn't help but interrupt. Village chief, there are too many things that can be done. If you go to the big cities along the coast, there are farmers working in those factories, construction sites, markets, and all kinds of small shops. There are farmers working there. Although there are no fields for us to farm in the city, as long as we are willing to learn and work hard, it won't be hard to find a job. Migrant workers entering the city is a big trend now. Yang Yi was one of them who had made a name for himself outside, so his words carried a lot of weight. After he finished speaking, the villagers beside him fell into deep thought. In fact, Yang Yi had also walked into a dead end when he came back during the new year. He was focused on fixing the road. Once the road was fixed, everyone would have a way out. However, it was better to teach a man to fish than to give him a fish. Now Emohenian's words enlightened him. He paused and continued, "Of course, not everyone wants to enter the city. We can do other businesses in the village. As long as we free up labor from the fields, we can make use of the surrounding mountains and rivers." How do we make use of them? Dong Qi, who was relatively conservative, was more interested in Yang Yi's idea than chasing the young people out of the village. We can contract the few small hills near our village. On the barren hills, we can plant fruit trees or tea trees. These are all cash crops, Yang Yi said. At this time, the villagers in the village also started to talk. "I think this idea is good. Plant tea trees. I heard that someone in Huaha village made a fortune by selling tea leaves. As for what is suitable for planting, I suggest that we invite the experts from the Institute of Agriculture or the Agricultural University to do a field study. They can see the acidity of the soil and water here, as well as the climate, and what kind of high-value agricultural products are suitable for planting." Yang Yi said, "Spend some money and you can take fewer detours. Moreover, not only do we plant fruit trees and tea trees, but we can also raise chickens and ducks in the orchards on the mountains and in the orchards. These free-range chickens can be sold at a very high price in the city. Also, the feces of the chickens and ducks can be used as fertilizer." Yang Yi spoke with fervor and assurance, as if he had stolen Emohenian's limelight. However, Emohenian didn't mind. He and Yang Chonggue looked at Yang Yi with complacent eyes. They felt proud that Yang Yi was supported by the villagers. Isn't the village preparing to build roads now? In the future, we don't have to worry about not being able to sell the things we plant, a villager said excitedly. Then what about the fields in the village? Who will farm the land? Who will contract the mountain? Dong Qi was still relatively calm. He had asked the crucial question. Emohenian's experience could finally be put to good use. The old man spoke with a Taiwanese accent. Everyone's fields in the village can be gathered together and set up a company. Hand it over to a few people to manage. Mechanize planting and harvesting. The money earned will be deducted from their management fees, and the rest will be distributed to each household according to the proportion of their fields. As for the rest, they can follow Little Yang's suggestion to enter the city or contract the mountains. It will all depend on their own ability. Yang Yi also expressed that he could lend money to the village to purchase farm machinery. Of course, the money could be returned. Yang Yi can't always be a philanthropist. It's not good for the villagers to develop the bad habit of relying on Yang Yi. They must learn to be self-reliant. A portion of the income from the village's land needs to be repaid in installments. But at that time, the villagers' income will increase, and they won't care about this small amount of money. I feel that we can set up a trading company in the village. Yang Yi added, whether it's the agricultural products in the fields, the fruits and tea leaves planted in the mountains, or the game that everyone usually goes deep into the mountains to hunt. If we ask someone to buy them, the price will definitely be lowered. We will suffer a loss. We can set up a trading company ourselves and sell the village's products to fight for greater benefits. Yang Yi still didn't explain it thoroughly. He could actually help them open up a sales channel on the Sahara online shopping mall. But the time wasn't ripe yet. It's best to let the villagers learn how to sell by themselves. After that, when online shopping is popularized to thousands of households, he can bring them along. As Mo Henian and Yang Yi talked, the future of Wadayaka village gradually took shape. Chapter 480. Note from Xiaohan. It is recommended that you listen to the song while reading this chapter. Time flew by. In the blink of an eye, it was April 11th. There was only one day left before Yang Yi and Murphy's wedding. To make it more formal, Murphy's family had moved out of Yang Yi's house yesterday and lived in a hotel in the county. According to the rules of a Chinese wedding, Yang Yi was not allowed to see the bride before picking her up. But in the evening, she who lived with her mother, called and said that she missed her father. Yang Yi, who was in the county to pick up his friends, also missed Murphy. So he took this excuse and went to the hotel where Murphy was staying. In the middle, Murphy's relatives and friends, Mo Xiaowan, and several of her sisters ran into them. They teased Yang Yi for not following the rules, but they could not do anything to the thick-skinned Yang Yi. They watched Yang Yi enter Murphy's room with a smile. Papa. It was she who opened the door for Yang Yi. The little girl knew that her father had come, because when Yang Yi went downstairs, she called again to urge him. She did not wait for her mother, but ran over happily and tiptoed to open the door for her father. As soon as she saw her father, she shouted happily and asked him to pick her up. She had already taken a bath and put on her pajamas. After seeing her father, who she missed the most, she would go to bed early. She had to get up early tomorrow. Papa, I want to sleep with you tonight. The little girl had not seen her father for a whole day, so she was very clingy. She hugged her father's neck and was reluctant to let go. Not tonight. I have to go back to the countryside tonight. I can't come to pick you and your mother up until tomorrow. Yang Yi pinched the little girl's pouting mouth and smiled. Then can I go back with Papa? She asked. How can you? Don't you want your mother? Mom will be very lonely living here alone. Yang Yi said softly. Mom has to stay here tonight because this is a requirement of the wedding. She tilted her head and thought for a while. She felt a little wronged, but she still said obediently. Okay, I can accompany Mom, but I want Papa to hug me for a while. Alright, I'll hug you for a while. Yang Yi hugged she to his chest with a little force. Then, he intimately pressed the side of his face against her little head and shook it. Murphy came out of the bathroom. She had just finished taking a shower, and had just heard Yang Yi's movements. Now that she saw Yang Yi and her daughter's sticky appearance, she couldn't help but smile. Have you received Big Brother Lon and the others? Murphy asked gently as she dried her hair. Yes, I've arranged everything for them. Yang Yi nodded. What about you? Have all the relatives arrived? Murphy's parents still had some relatives who were coming to attend her wedding. Some came from Harbor City, and some came from Taiwan. They had a long journey, so it was more difficult for them. Actually, I don't have to worry about it. Xiaowan has already helped to receive them. Murphy nodded a little embarrassedly. At this time, she suddenly raised her head from her father's arms and said like a little adult, Okay, I've hugged Papa enough. Papa, you go and hug Mom. She thought that her mother was like her and missed her father a lot. Of course, she wasn't wrong. It was just that her mother wasn't as clingy as her. These naive words stunned Yang Yi and Murphy for a moment. Then, they looked at each other and smiled. Although it was a hotel room, because a sum of money had been stuffed into it, the room was also pasted with the word happiness in red. The atmosphere was very warm. More importantly, at this moment, the family of three gathered together and laughed happily. It was very homey. She was very serious. She got down from her father's arms, then stood on the big bed, pushed her father to her mother and said, Mom, I'll let you have Papa. Murphy couldn't help laughing. She deliberately said, What do you mean you'll let me have Papa? Yang Yi is my husband. Thinking that her mother's words were very interesting, the little girl rolled on the bed, rolled up in the quilt, and giggled. However, Yang-yi really missed Murphy. Looking at Murphy, who had white skin and red lips after taking a bath, Yang-yi's heart was filled with tenderness. He picked up a comb from the dressing table and said softly, "Let me do it." Although in front of their daughter, the two of them were embarrassed to really hug each other intimately. Combing the hair of the person in their heart was also another kind of reflection of tenderness. Seeing Yang-yi's tenderness, Murphy's bright eyes were full of love. She gently nodded and put down the towel in her hand. Yang-yi took the comb, pulled up Murphy's wet hair, gently combed the hair that was gathered together by the water, and then swung it. The moist fragrance floated into the air and into his nose. Over and over again. Although repeated, Yang-yi didn't feel bored at all. Looking at the beautiful woman in the mirror without makeup, the love in his eyes was undisguised. "Sing a song for me," Mo-fei suddenly said. Her voice was full of attachment. "What song?" Yang-yi asked. "Tomorrow's song, I like it very much. I'll sing it with you." Murphy's voice was soft and soft. "Tomorrow's song won't do. That's the show we're going to perform." Yang-yi shook his head, but looking at Murphy in the dressing mirror, he suddenly had an idea. He smiled and said, "I'll sing a new song for you. You haven't heard it before. I originally had an idea, but now that I have inspiration, I've perfected it." Mo-fei was dazed for a second, and then responded with a happy MHM. There was no accompaniment, only a cappella singing. But for singers of Yang-yi's and Murphy's level, a cappella singing could still be outstanding. Yang-yi was combing Murphy's hair, brewing and humming softly. "I want you to be by my side, I want to dress you." Murphy's body trembled slightly, and she looked at Yang-yi with some surprise. Yang-yi's singing style was very special. Because of this tone, it was not the same as modern pop songs. But Murphy was still very keen to hear that this song's singing style was very characteristic of the old era of Shanghai music. One must know that at that time, Shanghai music was the peak of Chinese music at that time, just like the status of Hong Kong music at the end of the last century. Many classic songs were sung to this day, and Murphy also liked it very much. What made Murphy even happier was that Yang-yi actually used singing to express their current tenderness, whether it was combing hair or delicate feelings. "The wind of this night blows, it makes my heart itch. My girl, I'm in a foreign land looking at the moon." The lyrics and melody at the end were even more beautiful. Yang-yi sang with a magnetic but clear voice, like a glass of the best vintage red wine. As he gently shook it, the dark red wine rippled, and an intoxicating fragrance floated in the air. "Giving you beautiful clothes, looking at the yellow flowers in the mirror. The night is too tense, the time is too long, my girl. Where are you looking at the dawn?" The gentleness of the singing, the lingering of the lyrics. Murphy gradually became infatuated as she listened and watched. From the mirror, she saw the longing and infatuation in Yang-yi's eyes as he looked at her. From Yang-yi's soft humming, she could also hear his lingering feelings. "It's all this night's fault, it's so flirtatious, it's all this guitar's fault, it's so sad. Oh, I want to sing. Thinking of you silently, my girl, where are you looking at the dawn?" Late at night, Yang-yi went back, and she also fell asleep, but Murphy's ears still echoed with Yang-yi's singing. Tomorrow, she would be his bride, but she could not wait for dawn. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.